Opening credits. Double Protection. A Ménage Love Triangle Romance. By Selena Coffey. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Chapter 1. Allison Robb hit her snooze button for the third time, and groaned with the knowledge that she was going to be late if she didn't rock her lazy bones out of bed. She squinted through one eye to read the time emanating from the glow of her digital clock in her darkened bedroom, 7:30 a.m. She had only been asleep for 4 hours. Why couldn't she just close her eyes and pretend the world did not exist for about 6 more hours? She groaned again and began to roll out of bed, resting her feet on the cold floor. It was her own fault that she was this exhausted. She had gone out partying with some friends to Club Rave. It was college night and all drinks were half-priced if you had a Hamilton College student ID, and her best friends Nikki and Alex had talked her into letting off some pre-finals steam. It had been a blast, but not when she had a class at 8 a.m. She had eventually sauntered back into her apartment, a little tipsy to say the least, and passed out in bed a little after 3. It was going to be a long day. She moved her aching bones through her morning routine, trying to ignore the hangover that was threatening to destroy the morning even farther, and hopped in the shower. The hot water felt good rolling across her skin, and she finally started to feel like a human being again. The warm water always did the trick for her when she was struggling with sleep in the morning. She desperately wanted to ride this out and just go back to bed, but she had important things to do today. After studying for a week solid for her economics final, she thought she was finally ready. From what she had heard, Professor Daniel Carlson's finals were a total beast, and she was not exactly acing the class. She had even thought about changing majors from business administration to something else, but she wasn't sure what yet. She had always been told that college was the place where you were supposed to find yourself, and so far she had only seen a side that she didn't like. She had found the overall study of business to be very dry and very boring. At first, the idea of maybe owning or running a business one day had really appealed to her, and that was why she had chosen that popular major, but now that she was a semester into it, she realized that it was probably not for her. She knew that the freshman year was supposed to be a time of discovery, to find out what you wanted, which is why so many freshmen chose to go undeclared for the first semester or so to get the general ed prerequisites out of the way. But since she was a 21-year-old freshman, she really felt that she had to play catch-up. She had decided to take a year off after high school and go backpacking around Europe to find out what the world had to offer, and it had been fun, for a while. But after about 8 months, she was ready to pack it up and head home. It was a good thing she did too. 2 months after returning home while trying to get into a college of her choice, her dad had an accident on his ranch. A mother cow had gotten nervous and attacked him, kicking him several times, including once to the head. He had basically become an invalid overnight, and she had of course stayed to take care of him and work the ranch the best that she could. It had been just her and her dad since she was 12 years old. Her mother had died of cancer. Her dad had held on despite his injuries for a year and a half, but eventually he passed away in his sleep. Doctors said he'd had an aneurysm. So now it was just her, and she felt that she needed a fresh start and to get her life back on track. Both of her parents would have wanted it that way. She knew that. Allison had always been a strong girl, but she felt that she was coming apart at the seams a lot of the time. 21-year-old girls were not supposed to be orphans. No one was supposed to lose their parents that young. There would be no one to cheer at her graduation, no one to walk her down the aisle, no one to hold their grandchild for the first time, and no one to just be there for her. Allison stepped out of the shower and wiped a few tears from her eyes. She tried not to dwell on things too often, but it was hard. Sometimes thinking about things got her down, and she just didn't know quite how to deal with it all. She popped a few Pop-Tarts in the toaster and grabbed a glass of orange juice. She wondered if her friends Nikki and Alex had made it home okay, or if they were still partying somewhere. Lucky them, their finals weren't until noon, so they could sleep in a bit if they wanted to. It was the luck of the draw on that sort of thing, she supposed. By the time she got to class, Allison had woken up considerably and was working her way through a large McDonald's coffee. The nausea from the hangover was starting to subside a bit, thanks in part to the Pop-Tarts. She had no idea why that worked for her, but it always did, and she was able to relax a bit as the professor handed out the test. Her heart skipped a beat as the professor walked past her. Professor Daniel Carlson was the sexiest-looking guy she had ever seen. He was 28 years old. He had been voted most popular professor for 3 years in a row, and every girl in class had a huge crush on him. Allison was sure that half of the girls who chose the class were there just because of him. Every time he spoke and looked right at her, flashing that sexy grin, she felt her heartbeat lose its rhythm. Allison did not have a great deal of experience with men, and when things like that happened, she became increasingly nervous, a feeling she maintained a good majority of the time. She had tried a lot of things over the years to quell her anxiety and her nervous inclinations, but nothing had ever really helped. She had even tried switching to decaf in the mornings, and that had just made everything twice as bad. She wasn't sure why. It was just another thing that was out of place in her crazy life, that she didn't know how to deal with it. As the professor walked past her, she caught his gaze, and she thought for a moment that he was looking down her blouse. She had caught him staring at her before, but she couldn't imagine that he was really finding her all that attractive. Allison had been told she was cute before, but for some reason she could not really see it. She was average height, long brown hair, with glasses. She had tried contacts and they hurt her eyes too much, but she could not see a thing without them. And she guessed her face was actually pretty beneath the glasses, with a slightly chubby body. Although men had told her, and even her friends had told her that she had curves to die for, Allison just saw herself as frumpy and out of shape. She had a slight belly that most people would probably not even notice, and wide hips. When she really paid attention, she could see that she was attractive, but she just felt so out of touch with that world. She could never see herself as sexy, and she could never put the attitude behind it even if she did. And every time that she caught the professor, or any man really, staring at her
censored,
it filled her with a mixture of discomfort and flattery. She could not hide her blush, and she loved the attention, but at the same time she wished it was not happening because it might lead to her being asked out. Allison had dated very sporadically in her life, but she was actually pursued by men quite a bit. She guessed they must have seen something in her, but in the back of her mind she always felt that they just thought she might be naive and easy to get into the sack. She did not understand how any guy could take her seriously when there were so many other beautiful girls around. After the professor moved past her, she could not help but sneak a quick peek at his sexy ass. She had drifted into the realm of daydreams on more than one occasion, imagining what it would be like to squeeze his sweet buns. She felt herself blushing at the very thought of it, and then she had to scold herself silently. If she got embarrassed by the mere thought of being
censored
with a guy, then what was it going to be like when she was actually in that position? She tried to get the thoughts of
censored
off her mind and focus on the test. The test was even harder than she thought it might be, but she was very prepared. She realized if she wasn't hungover and she'd had a decent night's sleep, she would have felt more confident about it, but she had made her bed and she would have to lie in it. As sexy and charming as Professor Carlson was, he was really good at what he did. He had taught her a great deal about economics, and she knew she could continue on this path if she chose to, but she also knew that it just wasn't for her. She had actually toyed with the idea of becoming an English major. She had always loved writing and held the dream that maybe one day she could be a successful novelist, but she knew that was all a pipe dream. But since she loved it so much, maybe she could teach at the college level and work on the novelist dream on the side. That would be ideal. She was really considering changing her major to English. She knew that her parents would probably roll their eyes at such a dream, but it was her life and she needed to start living it more for herself. Her parents were gone. Allison was one of the last of the class to finish her exam. She had finished a while before, but she looked over every single answer about 6 times until she was satisfied with it. She did not want this test to affect her GPA and any chances she had of going to grad school. As she handed her test in, she smiled warmly at Professor Carlson. He smiled back at her, flashing his sexy dimples her way. She felt the blush overwhelm her, and she wanted to run out of the room so that he would not see the effect that he was having on her. "Allison?" the professor said as she turned away. She walked back slowly, not sure of what she had done wrong. "Yeah. How do you think you did?" She was a bit surprised by the question, and she stood there blinking for several seconds, wondering how to respond. "Are you okay?" Carlson asked. Allison realized she had not replied. "Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I did okay." "Just okay?" "Well, I did my best." "I hope it was good enough," Allison said. "Allison, you don't care much for economics, do you?" Allison was getting nervous. Well, it's fine. It's okay. Most of my students don't really care for economics. But with you I see that it basically bores you to tears," Carlson said. "I wouldn't say that," Allison said. Carlson gave her a disbelieving look. "It's okay. You can say how you feel. The reason I'm asking is because while I know you can do well in this class, that doesn't mean you should be in the class." "You don't want me in your class?" Allison asked. Carlson laughed. No, it's nothing like that. I love having you in class. In fact, I look forward every day to seeing you." His voice sounded direct and somehow flirtatious. Surely she was imagining things. He could not be coming on to her. "Okay, then I'm afraid I don't understand what you are trying to tell me," Allison said. She really wanted to run away. "I see you are a business major, but I can tell your heart is somewhere else. I'm just asking you if you enjoy what you are doing here. Because life is too short to waste time and energy on something you hate. That's what part of the college experience is about. You have to find that one thing that excites you and follow it." "Yeah, I guess business is not as interesting as I thought it would be." "Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I started out as an engineering major, but I realized quickly that it was going to bore me to an early grave, so I went into economics." "That's interesting," Allison said. The last two students in class turned in their papers and left the room. Allison and Professor Carlson were all alone now. Allison felt the tension. She was having trouble looking him in the eye. He was such a desirable man that she just wanted him to take her in his arms and ravage her on the desk right then and there. So you have to ask yourself, Allison, whether or not this is right for you, and if not, what you want to do instead. "I'll have to give it some thought." "Thanks." Carlson looked her deeply in the eyes. "Allison, what are you doing tonight?" "Tonight? Probably just studying. I have a couple more finals," Allison said. "Well, how about taking a break from studying to have a drink with me? We can talk more about your career options." Allison was speechless. Had he just asked her out? Or did he just really want to help her with her career, like he said? She didn't know what to do. It was a bad idea for a professor to date a student. It had to be against some sort of rule, but the naughty look in Carlson's eyes gave her the impression that he just didn't give a damn. "Okay. I could do that," Allison said. "Great." Allison left the room in a daze, wondering what had just happened. She felt that she was half awake and living in some sort of dream. On what planet was she living on that Professor Daniel Carlson had just asked her out? She went home to study and catch a quick nap before her afternoon finals. Allison finished the last of her drink and tried to walk without the room spinning. She had not planned to drink as much as she had, but she had been so nervous meeting with Carlson that she just kept drinking. Luckily, Carlson thought it was hilarious, and he was enough of a gentleman to walk her home. The date had gone perfect. Although she had been nervous, the atmosphere had been pretty laid back, and the conversation had flowed rather well. She just tried to project everything towards him and keep the focus off of her and her boring life. She was just enjoying learning about him. Daniel Carlson had gone to Hamilton actually on a wrestling scholarship. He had won several trophies and titles throughout his career. Allison could not help wondering how he looked in that tight wrestling uniform. She would have loved to see that. He was also involved in martial arts since he was a kid. It was strange to hear about all of these tough physical things that he was into, very atypical for a college professor. He also rode a motorcycle and wore the sexiest leather jacket. His long, beautiful hair was usually pulled back, but tonight he wore it down looking more like a model on the cover of a romance novel. Allison felt a bit exposed hanging out with him at the local bar where all the college kids hung out. She didn't want to get Carlson in any trouble, but he didn't seem to be at all concerned. The more she learned about him, the more she realized that he was a bit of a rebel, and this just made him seem all the more sexy. He was smart, beautiful, and a bit dangerous. She could feel all of her attraction switches being turned on at the same time. It was an irresistible package he was showing her. He had asked her a bit about herself, and she found herself opening up a bit more than she intended, telling him all about her parents and her situation that resulted in her starting college 3 years behind everyone else. He was very understanding, and she could tell that his compassion was genuine. Daniel Carlson, he preferred to be called just Carlson, had a huge heart beneath the bad boy exterior. He was multifaceted, and it was driving her wild. As they stumbled out of the bar, Allison was met by the chilly night air brushing against her face. It felt great, and it began to sober her up just a little bit. She really hoped that she was not acting like too much of a moron by getting a little tipsy on their date. She couldn't tell if Carlson really cared about that or not. He was being really sweet and gentle with her. "I appreciate you walking me home," Allison said. "Of course. I wanted to spend more time with you anyway," Carlson replied. Allison smiled. When he said things like that, it drove her wild. "So, I have to ask," Allison said. "Isn't it against school policy for professors to date students?" "I wouldn't want to get you into trouble or anything," Allison said. Carlson smiled. "It is frowned upon, but I don't care too much for silly rules. Besides, if you change majors, then you won't be my student anymore." "Oh, that's right. It's fun to find loopholes," Carlson said. Allison couldn't help but laugh. The man was funnier than you would expect. It was really peaceful on campus at night. She had never really walked around late at night on campus because it wasn't really that safe for a girl to do so. Even though the town of Marietta was pretty safe, on the campus it was like a separate community, and with 10,000 students, it was pretty scary for a female to go walking around by herself late at night. There had been reports of things happening to girls who dared to do it, even thought that was still rare. Allison wasn't one to take chances like that. She felt really safe walking with Carlson, though. She imagined that she would feel safe with him pretty much anywhere. As they reached her dorm building, Carlson put his arm around her. Allison felt the anticipation of what was about to happen, and also the awkwardness of being on display, although she could not see anyone close to them in the dark. Carlson leaned in and
censored
her sweetly. She could smell his sweet masculine scent as his lips touched hers. It was like a sauna had been turned on all around her, and she found herself rising up on her tiptoes to accommodate this beautiful tall man who was
censored
her so gently. When their lips parted, she continued to reach for him, hoping that the
censored
would continue. He just smiled and held her closely for a few seconds, running his hand through her hair. His fingers were strong and thick, and it got her wondering what else he had that was strong and thick. "Good night, sexy," Carlson said. "Good night," Allison replied. She practically floated up the stairs to her dorm room. She had been planning on studying some more, but she was too tired and too excited from what had just happened to ever hope to concentrate on studying. It was just as well. She'd been studying for weeks for these tests, and anything she did right now was going to be overkill. She was just overly paranoid about them. She closed the door behind her, thankful that she'd got a single room without any roommates to bug her at all, and began to undress for the night. As she pulled her shirt off, she looked at herself in the mirror, noticing for the first time really that she did have a pretty nice body, with naturally very large
censored
Maybe she had been selling herself short, and she needed to put herself out in the world a little more. That was when she heard the scream. It was coming from outside. She quickly put on a shirt and peeked out the window, terrified of what she might find out there. It was dark, but she could see a struggle going on. She could not believe her eyes. It could not be, could it? Squinting hard to peer into the darkness, she saw what appeared to be a man attacking a woman. He was choking her from behind, and she was struggling like mad to fight him off. "Oh my God!" Allison exclaimed. She backed away from the widow, wishing she could unsee what she had just witnessed. She wanted to run and help the girl, but that would just get her killed as well. The police. She grabbed her phone and pressed the speed dial for the campus police. They picked up on the first ring. "Campus police. What is your emergency?" "Yes. There is a woman being attacked. Some guy is strangling her. Please hurry." "Where is this happening?" "Right in front of my dorm. It's Snyder Hall." "Oh God, I don't know how much time she has." "Miss, calm down. Officers are on their way." Allison pulled the curtain back again, hoping to see that the girl had somehow managed to get away. Instead, she saw the unthinkable. The girl was no longer moving, and the man was standing beside her looking down. Suddenly, he looked right up at Allison's window. He was not wearing a mask, and she could see his face plain as day in the bright light of the full moon. She did not recognize him, but she would never forget the face of a killer. He smiled at her for a second, and then a look of rage crossed his face. He began to walk towards the dormitory. He was coming after her. "Oh my God. I think she is dead. The guy saw me. He saw me looking out my window. He is coming." Allison screamed, before she started to hyperventilate. "Ma'am? Stay where you are. Is your dorm locked?" "Yes, you have to know the code to buzz in," Allison said, suddenly remembering this and buying herself at least a little bit of relief. Allison heard sirens approaching. The killer must have as well, because he stopped suddenly and glanced behind him. He paused a second, as if considering something, and looked up at her. He bared his teeth at her and clenched his fist. He then pointed at her, and then made a motion across his neck as if he was lynching someone. The man then ran off into the darkness. She prayed that they would find the maniac. He had seen her and he knew where she lived. She would not be safe. He was going to hunt her down and kill her the second he got the chance. "He is running away," Allison said. "He saw me. He saw me. He knows where I live." Tears began to stream down her face, and she wished that Carlson were there. She wished she had invited him to come inside. He probably would not have, because as much of a rebel as he was, that was giving a big bird to the world and vexing the school to fire him. She would never forgive herself if that happened. "And you are certain he saw you?" Detective Hank Adams said. He stroked his chin slowly, as he looked right into Allison's eyes. It was almost like he was grilling her under interrogation, which she figured he had gotten so used to doing, that he probably didn't realize he was doing it. Still, it was sexy as hell, and Allison found it hard to piece together everything that had happened. He might just have to listen to the 911 tape. "I know he did. He looked at me, and then he motioned like he was going to kill me." "Okay, and you didn't recognize him?" "No. He looked like he might be a student, so he was in his early 20s, I would say." "You got that good of a look at him?" "Yeah. The moon was crazy bright, and when he stepped out of the shadows after doing that to that girl, I could see his face perfectly." "So, you could pick him out of a lineup?" "I think so." "Great. That may be very helpful," Detective Adams said. The crime scene outside was a total mess, but Detective Adams had let Allison stay in her room and they were speaking there. It was better than being close to the girl. She couldn't have handled that. Allison was squeamish beyond belief, and to see that girl being murdered and knowing there was nothing she could do about it sickened her all over. Carlson had wanted to come over, but Allison had told him not to. She didn't think it was right that he be seen at her dorm room. He had insisted telling her that he didn't care, but she had insisted back that she did care. She was not going to get him fired. But she found it adorable how they had only had one date, and it was very casual, but Carlson was already feeling very protective of her. Allison's phone rang right then. She went to pick it up, and the detective stopped her. "Do you recognize the number?" Allison checked, and the number said unavailable. "It's blocked," Allison replied. "Hold a second." Hank picked up his cell phone, pushed a button on speed dial, and was talking to someone almost instantly. "Hey, do a trace on incoming calls for number 615-555-2536. Thanks." Detective Adams pointed towards Allison. "Now you can answer." Allison was amazed at how fast that happened. Her phone was still ringing. She picked up the phone quickly, clicking on speaker. "Hello? Tell the cops not to bother tracing this, it won't do any good. I am coming after you. You can't hide and no one can protect you. I know everything about you now, Allison." The caller hung up as Allison broke down into tears. Detective Adams wrapped his arms around her gently. It felt good to be in his embrace. She didn't know what she was going to do. This madman was going to find her. "Detective Adams, he is going to kill me. I have to get out of here." Allison screamed. "Hey, calm down. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. And call me Hank, okay?" His voice was calm and soothing, not authoritative the way it was a few minutes ago. Allison found it interesting how he could switch personas so easily. "What am I going to do?" Allison said. "The best thing to remember here is to not give him any more power than he already has on you. He said he knows everything about you, but maybe he's lying. You can't dwell on it. But if he knows me, then he knows where I'm going to be pretty much all the time. I'm going to be there with you every step of the way until we catch him. I'm going to guard you and make sure that nothing happens to you. You're assigning yourself to me as my own personal bodyguard?" "Detective, I can't ask you to do that. I know you are busy. It's Hank and you are my number one priority right now. Do you offer your undivided protection to every hysterical woman who witnesses a murder?" "Only the beautiful ones," Hank said. Allison almost choked. She could not believe that Hank had actually said that. He was coming on to her. First Carlson and now Hank. How did it happen that she suddenly had two sexy men who were interested in her? If she had not been so shaken up by what had just happened to her, she might have been in a position to enjoy it all more. But that wasn't the case. She had bigger things on her mind than romance. This man was going to kill her. He had called her and threatened her. He knew her phone number, her address, her name, and probably her full class schedule. With all of these things spinning around inside of her head, Allison was starting to feel relieved. She had two sexy, strong, alpha males guarding her. What girl could feel scared in that position? Chapter 2. "You are so lucky," Sherry Durwood said. Allison had to smile, because she knew that Sherry was right. Sherry Durwood and Allison had become best friends, shortly after Allison had started Hamilton at the beginning of the semester. They were the same age, but Sherry was a junior and had her own apartment she shared with two other girls off campus. Most people decided that living off campus was the way to go after about a year in the dorms. But freshmen were required to live on campus. Sherry and Allison were in the same Accounting 101 class. They had bonded over their shared lack of interest in accounting. It felt very repetitive, and they both realized how much they hated numbers. It was kind of bad for Sherry, because Sherry had recently declared her major as accounting. She had been in business administration, like Allison, but decided that she didn't want to be a boss as much as she thought, too much responsibility, and she instead decided just to go with accounting. It might mean that she was going to have to take an extra semester or two, but Sherry's family was loaded, and she wasn't really in a hurry to grow up and get a job anyway. "Why am I so lucky? Some maniac wants to kill me," Allison replied. Because you got a hunky detective, basically hovering around you all the time. Is he going to all your classes with you? That is the plan, Allison said. They groaned as their professor, Richard Doyle, came into class to begin the lecture. He rolled his eyes as he saw Hank sitting in the back row looking intense and alert. All of Allison's teachers had been made aware of the fact that she was under protection, and all of them had been pretty accommodating, but Professor Doyle was obviously annoyed. The guy was so self-centered, he hated to think that there could be anything that got in the way of his fabulous lectures. Allison's next class was economics. She had not really spoken at length to Carlson since the night of the murder. He had called her a few times, and she spoke briefly with him on the phone, letting him know that she was all right and that she had protection. He had been glad to see that she had the supervision, until he saw Hank. When Hank first walked into Carlson's classroom behind Allison, Carlson's eyes had widened for the briefest moment. Allison was not sure if there was going to be a clash between the two men, or if they were able to keep things civil. She wanted to tell Carlson that he had nothing to worry about since she wasn't dating anyone else, and if things kept going the way they were with them, she didn't see the need to. She knew it was weird to develop feelings for a guy after one date, but she couldn't help it. She had always worn her heart on her sleeve, and for her to meet a man who was not going to take advantage of her sensitive nature was refreshing. But then there was Hank. He had expressed interest in her, and she had at times seen him running his eyes over the contours of her body. Allison had also consciously started to wear some of her tighter, more form-fitting outfits. It felt good to be wanted by someone, and she was trying to learn to embrace that part of her for the first time. After what she had seen, she knew that there was a chance she might not have much time left. It was a morbid thought, but she had to face the facts that watching someone be murdered had changed her. She no longer wanted to hide in the shadows and feel afraid of life. Tomorrow something could happen, and she could die. If not from the maniac, maybe from something else. That was the way of the world. She arrived at class a bit early, because she wanted to talk with Carlson before the rest of the class showed up. It was weird being in class when it was empty, as it had been the other night as well. For some reason it always felt like she was not supposed to be there. Carlson came over to her as she entered. He put his arm around her, and then noticed that Hank was right behind her. This seemed off-putting to him for a split second, but he shrugged it off. "How are you holding up?" Carlson asked. "I'm okay, just taking it day by day," Allison responded. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there the other night. I keep telling myself that I should have stayed, but then again there wasn't any reason to stay. You went inside and you were safe, but I keep thinking about that poor girl. If I had just been a few minutes later, I still would have been there and that girl would have been safe." "You can't beat yourself up over this," Hank said. "Anyone can play the shoulda woulda coulda game, but it won't do you any good." "Thanks. I appreciate that," Carlson said. Hank nodded. Allison smiled. It looked like the boys were going to get along okay after all. "So the girl that died didn't live in your building?" Carlson asked. "No, she lived in Seton Hall." "Did you know her?" "I'd seen her around, but I don't think I ever spoke to her." "I can't imagine what it was like to watch that," Carlson said, putting his arm around her. His touch felt sweet and comforting, and she wished she could just fully fall into his strong arms right at that moment. "I'll never forget it. I felt totally helpless. I keep thinking that I could have done something more to help that girl. Maybe if I'd gone out, then I would have." "He would have killed you too," Hank said. Allison shut her eyes and tried to ignore the truth for a moment. It was so painful to know that there was nothing she could have done. Hank was right. "He might kill me still," Allison replied. "Not on my watch," Hank said. Carlson shot him a look, and at first Allison thought she could see jealousy residing there, but only for a second. Carlson smiled and nodded at Hank. Hank smiled back slightly. "I think you should spend the night at my place tonight," Carlson said. "I'm not sure that is a good idea," Allison said. "It's okay. I want to be close to you." Allison looked at him for a moment, and wondered how in the hell she had become so lucky to have a man like him in her life. She realized that they had only been out once, and it had been a great evening, but somehow she felt that the time they had spent together in class was some sort of secret relationship that she had only just found out about. Each day she had grown closer to him and him to her. It felt like they had been dating for months, in silence. Now it was out in the open, and it was beyond her wildest dreams how good it felt. "I would love that, but I do have protection." "You don't have to stick your neck out for me," Allison said. "You let me worry about my job. I am going to worry about you and your safety first." "Of course Hank will be there to do his job as well," Carlson said, smiling at Hank. Hank loosened up a bit. He had been a little tense when Carlson suggested the idea of Allison spending the night at his place, but he relaxed now. Allison could not help but wonder what role Hank would have in keeping her safe with Carlson there, and what role he would have in her relationship with Carlson. Would he have a part in that? How would that be? As students began to file in and Allison took her seat, she had to wonder. As she looked from one man to the next, she realized that she wanted them both. She was not sure that she would be able to choose if it came down to it. She had just met Hank, but she knew that there was an attraction there that could not be denied. It was a raw, primal physical attraction that she knew would overtake her. And she felt emotionally connected to Carlson after all of the time they had spent together. She had no idea what she was going to do. Chapter 3. Allison sat down on the couch with her wine and leaned back to relax. It had been a long day of finals and stress. With all that had happened, she hadn't had time to study for her last final properly. She had planned to finish cramming last night, but that had been sidelined by the murder that she'd witnessed. She had hoped that most of her professors would be understanding about the situation, but since it happened the night before the final, and it did not actually happen to her directly, they were refusing to grant her any mercy. Professor Edwards and Professor Langstrom were both old and set in their ways. They had both been teaching at the university for over 30 years, and their reputations were quite well known. Basically everyone hated them, and warned everyone not to take their classes, so only people who were unable to secure a seat in Professor Myers or Professor Watts' classes ended up there. It was like having the fastest gun, and Allison had lost. Allison plowed through the finals the best she could, and she figured she did pretty well since she had been studying hard all semester and doing constant weekend reviews, instead of cramming it all into the last few days like most people did. She was really only adding the cramming sessions in because she was so paranoid. But it was all over now. She had taken her last exam 3 hours ago. Afterwards, she went home for a quick nap and a shower. Now she was at Carlson's relaxing with a few movies and some wine after a great dinner. She had no idea that Carlson was such a great chef. He had cooked for her, which she found to be just sexy as hell. He had made a wonderful Italian dish that she had never had before. It was kind of a cross between lasagna and chicken parmesan. He called it Latavia, but she wasn't sure if that was the real name for it or not. Carlson said that it was a recipe passed down from his grandmother. Allison was starving, and wolfed the delicious meal down until her stomach was stretched beyond maximum capacity. She wished she had not eaten so much, but Carlson seemed to enjoy the fact that she had a healthy appetite. "So, how is the wine?" Carlson asked. "It's delicious," Allison replied. "It's a 20-year-old Merlot. It's a good year." "Really?" "It is great. I don't know much about wines, I'm afraid. I've got a small wine cellar in my basement. I've always enjoyed it." "Are you a connoisseur?" "Hardly, but I try to do some research on it. I like to learn as much as I can about it all." "It is pretty interesting," Allison said. "So, how are you holding up?" "I'm doing okay," Allison said. She wanted to be truthful and tell him she could not stop looking over her shoulder. She was afraid to be alone even in the bathroom. She thought that everyone she passed everywhere might be the guy who was trying to kill her, and she doubted that she would be able to sleep at all until the man was caught. But she kept her feelings to herself. She really did not want Carlson to feel that he was responsible for her. Good. How were your finals? Glad it's all over? Oh God, yes. The last two were a cow, Allison said. She laughed as she was just starting to feel the wine. Yeah, I know about those two professors. Their evil is legendary, Carlson said. I'm just glad it's over and I'm looking forward to a nice break, Allison said. So, have you given any more thought to switching majors? I have. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go in tomorrow and look at switching to English. That's what you want to do? Is that where your heart lies and your passion lives? Carlson asked. He had an intensity in his eyes when he spoke of passion that turned her on immensely. Yeah. It is. You were right, I have no business doing something that doesn't make me happy. I have this opportunity here at college to do what I want and start out on the right life path for me, and I'm going to take it. That's the way to be. You have to promise that you will dedicate your first book to me, Carlson said. Allison laughed. She could hardly imagine that she would have a book written, let alone published, for years to come, but stranger things had happened. If she ever wanted to write a horror thriller, she could just draw inspiration from the events of last night and the fear that she was now living with and would live with for a long time to come. Will do, Allison said. Any idea what sort of thing you want to write about? Do you have a favorite genre or niche that calls to you? Carlson asked. She loved that he was taking such an interest in her work. I'm not totally sure. The thing is, I love a lot of different authors and types of literature. I can understand that. Maybe you could help me with the book I'm going to write. You are writing a book? Yeah, I've been asked to write a textbook, but I also have a special interest book on economic recovery that I want to delve into. I'm going to do the textbook because it pays well, of course, but my passion is on this other one. I'm also planning to write a companion book to the textbook, aimed at professors on how to relate information in a more interesting way to capture the mind of the student. I realize economics can be pretty dry. It can be, but not the way you teach it, Allison said. Carlson smiled. God, she loved that smile. Thanks. He leaned over right then and
censored
her. She had not been expecting it, but she had been thinking about it ever since the last time their lips had met. His mouth was warm and soft on hers as he moved his lips, slowly massaging hers. Allison wanted to open her eyes and look straight into his right then, but she didn't dare. She was almost afraid that he might actually be looking right back into her eyes, and that somehow he would see beneath everything she pretended to be, and see the scared girl that she really was.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Hank was standing there watching everything. Chapter 4. Allison walked into her dorm room and grabbed herself a soda from the fridge. She kept thinking about the amazing night she had just spent with Carlson and how she didn't think she would ever be the same again. The experience had awakened something inside of her that had lain dormant for far too long. She had always been so scared and so afraid of experiencing life to the fullest, but with the aftermath of witnessing a murder and the realization that the maniac might be coming after her soon, she had just thrown caution to the wind and decided to live like there was no tomorrow. But it hadn't been quite that easy. When she woke up in Carlson's bed, she immediately felt the nerves and the anxiety coming back to her as she replayed the events over and over in her mind. She could not believe some of the things that she had done and the bold behavior that had come from her. She felt a bit ashamed and embarrassed. She wanted nothing more than to get dressed and hightail it out of there before Carlson woke up. How could she look him in the eyes again? She had acted completely out of character for her. But it had been so wonderful. She loved every moment of it. Was that wrong? Was it wrong to feel that good about being so bad? Carlson walked into the bedroom just as she was mulling over the thought, fresh out of the shower. He was dried off but completely
censored.
Allison could hardly believe her eyes as she became glued to the sight of his rock-hard body and his beautiful penis that swung slightly between his legs. She kept thinking about it being inside of her, and she wanted it there again, soon. She felt herself getting a little wet, just at the thought of it. She took a few deep breaths and tried to calm down. She was starting to feel a bit like a nympho. Carlson made breakfast for the two of them, and then he had to go to class. He had a few more finals to give, and then he had to get his grades in by 5 on Friday. It was going to be a very busy week for him. Hank followed Allison back to her place. She remembered seeing him last night. He had been watching her. Why? Was he a pervert? Or did he just like seeing her? She wasn't sure, and she didn't know quite how to feel about it. She was actually surprised to find that Hank was still there. Apparently the man never slept. She had expected to find someone else to relieve him at some point during a 24-hour period, but as yet, she had not seen anyone else. She sat down on her couch and turned on the television. She felt like a good day of relaxing was in order. The knock came at her door within 5 seconds. She groaned as she got up to open the door. Hank stood there. He was smiling that sexy smile of his, and eyeing her up and down with those penetrating eyes. "Hey, what's up?" Allison asked. Hank didn't answer at first. He just sauntered into her room uninvited, which she thought was a little weird. "I just wanted to check in and let you know that Tony will be taking over for a bit, but I'll be back this afternoon." "Oh, okay. Thanks." Hank lingered for a few seconds longer. Allison was not sure what he was up to, but it was both
censored
and strange. "I saw you last night," Hank said. Allison cleared her throat, suddenly embarrassed. "I know. Why were you watching?" Hank smiled. "I was just making sure you were safe. It was only for a second." "So you weren't watching the whole time?" Hank smiled wider. "No, not at all. I believe in boundaries and privacy." "Oh, okay." Allison felt much better already. She had been creeped out when she thought that Hank had been spying on her. "But from what I did see, I have to say that I couldn't help being a little jealous," Hank said. Allison blushed. "Really? Why?" She already knew the answer, but she wanted to hear him say it. "Any man who is lucky enough to end up with you in his bed is to be envied." "Well, thanks for the compliment, but are you sure that is appropriate?" Allison said. She was being flirty as hell, and she had no idea where it was coming from. She had never felt this alive and sexy before. Being with Carlson had truly awakened something inside of her. She couldn't help the fact that she felt a strong attraction to Hank. "I think if two people feel something, then what they choose to do or express to one another is appropriate, as long as the feeling is mutual." Hank leaned against the door. He was looking Allison up and down, obviously enjoying the view. His eyes were slowly gazing over every nuance of her body from head to toe, and she felt a bit awkward, but she also was allowing herself to enjoy every second of it. It was nice to have the distractions from everything that was going on around her. Her phone rang right then. She looked at the display, and her heart sank when she saw that it was an unavailable number. She showed it to Hank, who was instantly alert. "We have a trace on your phone. Go ahead and answer it," Hank said. It made Allison feel a little creepy that the police had a trace on her phone, but she realized it might save her life. Still, it felt like she was on display, and very
censored.
"Hello?" Allison asked, answering the phone. "Hello, Allison. I'm getting closer. You think that cop can protect you? Please, when I'm done with you, he won't be able to get a job as a security guard at the mall." "Why are you doing this? Why did you?" Allison began, but the call dropped. She looked at her phone, her hand shaking violently. Tears began to well up in her eyes. She had actually started to confront and antagonize the psycho. What had she been thinking? Did she just want to rile him up? She could not let her anger get the better of her that way. Hank dialed a number on his speed dial. "You get anything from that trace?" He paused a moment. "Damn. I figured? Thanks." Allison sat down on her couch and began to cry. Hank joined her, taking her hand in his. It's okay. He is just trying to freak you out. Don't let him. I don't know how much of this I can stand, Allison said. We will find him. These guys are so unstable that he is probably working himself up into a crazed frenzy, knowing that there is someone out there who can identify him, but there is nothing he can do to get to you. We have officers patrolling the area outside of the dorm building and the quad, and I'm right here. You are as safe as you can be. Allison wiped some tears away from her eyes and smiled at Hank. Thanks. It means a lot to me that you are here. Absolutely. Would you stay here with me today? I know you haven't slept, but you are welcome to crash on my bed. I would just feel safer if you didn't leave. Hank looked at her with concern on his face. He stroked her hand gently. Of course I'll stay with you. Hank did not end up getting much sleep while staying at Allison's. The two of them actually had a blast watching goofy movies and shows on Netflix, talking and getting to know each other. Hank had a surprisingly witty sense of humor, and once he opened up, he was actually very easygoing. You just had to break through the cop persona. So, you were in the school band? Allison asked. She could hardly believe what Hank was saying. No, I was in the jazz band. That is totally different than the marching band, Hank replied. Oh, I see. Well, I guess that is way cooler. What did you play? I played bass. Oh, see, that is sexy. I know it is, Hank replied. Did you have a lot of girlfriends in high school? Allison asked. Not a lot, but the ones I did have was not because of the jazz band. It was more because of football than anything, I guess. I knew you were a jock, Allison said. I wouldn't call myself a jock. I always hated that word. I just loved to play sports, but I never was one of those guys that lived and breathed it constantly. That just wasn't my thing. It was just something I did for fun, Hank said. Were you good? Allison asked. Yeah, I was. I was a wide receiver, and I was pretty fast. I actually went to college on a football scholarship. Sweet. That's a great way to pay for education, Allison said. Yeah, it is. That was mostly why I played in college. My coach was always harping at me to work harder, because he thought if I had put my all into it, I might have had a shot to go pro, but my heart wasn't really in it. My dad was a cop and my grandpa was a cop. I had grown up around that my whole life, and I wanted to do something that helped people. Playing football did nothing to help anyone. So I studied criminal justice and set my sights on being a cop. That's pretty fascinating. So, how about you? What is Allison's story? Hank asked. She loved the goofy grin he added to highlight the end of his sentences sometimes. Allison opened up and told him about her background, and that she was now getting ready to change majors to English. So, besides writing, what else are you passionate about? Hank asked. Well, I used to love horseback riding when I was a kid. You don't ride anymore? No, my dad owned a ranch and we had a small stable there. I used to ride all the time on the weekends and after school. I loved it. So what happened? Well, one day I had an accident and fell off the horse. I broke my arm and spent the entire summer with my arm in a cast. After that, I could never force myself to go back on another horse. I had come close to hitting my head in the accident. I can remember falling to the ground. It seemed like it was going to last forever, and I was never going to land. I barely remember even landing on the ground, but suddenly my whole arm was on fire with pain. The fear of the fall and how fast it all happened scared me badly, and I never wanted to do it again. That's rough. Of course you know that it's all in your mind, Hank said. Well, I fell once, I could fall again. That is what I could not stand, Allison said. Yeah, but you've built up this huge mass of fear in your mind. You have psyched yourself out of it. Of course it is possible that you will fall at some point, but it's also much more possible that you won't. You just have to grin and bear it, and get that first ride over with. I know. You're right. Maybe if I live through this, I will try it again, Allison said. Don't talk like that, you are going to make it through this just fine. I wish I had your faith in everything. Well, I happen to be very good at what I do. I'm not about to let anything happen to you, Hank said. Something in his eyes right then drew her to him. He had this intensity that she had never seen in anyone other than Carlson. It was magnetic, and before she could consciously think about what she was doing, she was planting her lips on his. Hank
censored
her back nice and smoothly. He felt different than Carlson, but he was just as exciting. Hank's strength and sheer force of will echoed through his every movement and through every gesture. She could not break it down or explain it with words, but she was drawn to him like a laser beam. She was too weak to resist any of his charms. Hank pulled back slowly, his lips softly moving off Allison's. She loved the softness of the ending.
censored
Allison was unable to hold back a big, goofy grin. It just felt so damn good. I've been wanting to do that for a while, Allison said. Hank smiled. Me too, but what do you think your friend Carlson would have to say about it? Well, we aren't exclusive. I mean, we have never really talked about it, but we've only been out once and I've never said I wanted to date him exclusively. I did want to, but that was before I met you. Hank brushed her hair back gently. The way he groomed her was intoxicating, and she
censored
for him to touch her other places, and to touch her deeply. She wanted his focused attention all over her body right then, and Allison could feel herself getting wet at the very thought of it. Well, what if this turns into something more and I end up wanting more from the relationship? Allison was caught slightly off guard by the question, but she deflected it with the greatest of ease. She was really too amped up by everything to focus on what Hank really had on his mind, or the question he was actually posing to her. She had considered the possibility that if she did engage in affairs with both men, then she might at one point be asked to choose one, but she just didn't think she would be put in that position anytime soon. Or at least she hoped that didn't happen. She just didn't know what she wanted right now, but she was too excited to turn away from any of it. We can cross that bridge when we come to it, Allison said.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
What the hell is this? Allison's head shot around quickly, and she felt her neck twinge with the whiplash. She moved quickly away from Hank and got off the couch. Carlson stood there with a bag of Chinese food and a look on his face like he was going to be sick. He was filled with hurt and anger, she could tell. Allison never wanted to have him feel like that. The hurt passed from him to her, mingling with the shock of what was going on. Carlson. It's not what you think, Allison began but quickly realized how stupid that sounded. I'm pretty sure it is. I thought there was something between you two. It was something that I could just sense, Carlson said, setting the Chinese food down on the kitchen table. What are you doing here? I didn't hear you knock, Allison said. I knocked several times, but I guess you were so busy you didn't hear me. I was concerned, so I just came in. Allison guessed that Hank must have forgotten to lock the door behind him earlier. That creeped her out a bit, although anyone had to be buzzed to get into the dormitory anyway. Besides, with Hank here, she still felt really safe. What are you doing here? Allison asked. Carlson looked at her like she was on crack. I was in between things, and I thought I would surprise you by bringing over lunch. That's really sweet, Allison said. She realized that she was sounding like an idiot, but the words were not coming out right. This was not the position that she ever thought she would find herself in. It was like something that she would write in a story. She made a mental note that the character in her story would be saying some really witty and clever things right now. Yeah, it's real sweet, Carlson said. His tone was a bit mocking. Allison quickly put on her clothes. Hank put his on casually, as if he didn't have a care in the world. It was unsettling how he was not at all fazed by this situation. I'm not sure what to say here. I thought we had something special going on, Carlson said. We do, but we never said we were exclusive. Did you think that we were? I am so sorry. I would never do anything intentionally to hurt you, Allison said. She was shocked that she had come up with those words because she had felt that they were exclusive until Hank came along. Allison had never been the kind of girl to date much, let alone date two guys at the same time. Carlson must have figured she wasn't that kind of girl. That was why he was so shocked. She knew that, and she felt terrible for hurting him. You're right, we didn't. I guess I just thought that we were heading that way, Carlson said. Me too. Maybe we still are, Allison said. She almost wished she had not added the last part. What? I'm not seeing how that works. Carlson began. Allison felt something come over her. It was almost like she was being possessed by someone else, and her words and her actions ceased to be her own. She started to feel a warmth all over her body, and she started to feel like anything in the world was possible. What was happening to her? Was it the brush with death? The fact that her time on this earth could be over at any moment? Was it just the fear manifesting itself into these strange,
censored,
and behaviors? She didn't know, but right now she was feeling too good to care. I don't see why this is a problem, Allison said. Hank looked at her, and then at Carlson with an inquisitive expression. She was starting to pique his interest. Again, I'm not following you, Carlson replied. I don't want to choose between the two of you, Allison said. I love having you both in my life. I feel safer and more secure than I've ever felt. I haven't felt this comfort for some time. Are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting? Carlson asked. Yes. I want to be with both of you. The question is whether you both want to be with me. Allison heard the words coming out of her mouth and lingering on the air, but it was almost as if she had not spoken them. It was like she was standing beside Carlson and watching it all unfold in front of her, but she was not an active player. She had just suggested what would have been unthinkable to her just a week ago. What was happening to her? She wasn't sure, but she was having so much fun with it. Maybe this is who she was now. This is who she wanted to be. Deep down inside, this other side of her had been hidden away, lying dormant, just waiting for the perfect time to come alive. This was really happening to her. She reached up and felt her lips with her finger, slowly tracing the wide smile on her face. She was there all right, she was still her, and she had said those things. I'm not sure how I feel about that, Carlson said. Me either, Hank added. Well, there is only one way to find out. I say we should try it and see. It could be so perfect, Allison said. I don't like to share. I've started to develop real feelings for you, Allison. I don't think I can handle sharing you with someone else. That is a lot you are asking of me, Carlson said. I knew instantly that I wanted you. The moment I laid eyes on you, I knew that there was a special spark between us, Hank said. He began to pace as he talked. I have not had many close relationships in my life, but the way I feel about you when I've barely really known you is both scary and exhilarating. I want to explore where that goes. And if it goes as deeply as I think it can go, then I don't think I could share you with anybody either. Allison sat down on the couch and leaned back. She was feeling very loose and very relaxed at that moment. She was even thinking that she could just lie down and fall asleep for a while. She heard what the guys were saying, and she had figured as much, but she didn't know why they wouldn't just give it a go. Well, I'm not ready to commit. I want to be with both of you for right now. Eventually, I will probably want to commit to one of you, but I don't know who that is right now. If you guys think there is a future with me, then I don't see why you can't respect that and just play it by ear. Do you have to have an answer now? Why can't we just let things happen naturally? In the end, it will all work itself out, Allison said. She didn't think that any of the sexologists on TLC could have said it any better themselves. Both men thought long and hard for a few minutes. The silence in the room was deafening, and this definitely was not helping Allison to keep her eyes open. For whatever reason, she had been almost overwhelmed by a sudden urge to sleep. It might have been the way that Hank had just worn her out. She had never really been taken and just ravaged like that before. What Carlson and she had done was more like a slow, sensuous bonding, whereas Hank had just taken her caveman style. She loved being dominated, and she could not wait to try it again, but this time she wanted to try that with Carlson. Okay, I can live with that. I'm willing to be patient and let nature take its course, Carlson said. Great! Allison exclaimed. Hank had not chimed in yet, and when Allison glanced at him, he was wearing a stone-cold expression that was both tough to read and scary. He could be pretty menacing when he went into his cop character, and she figured that was kind of what he was doing right now. The man was a master of compartmentalization of his feelings. She figured he kind of had to be with his line of work. Hank? What are you thinking? Allison asked. Hank paused a few moments and then smiled slightly. I'm up for the challenge, he said. Allison had to fight the urge to giggle like a little schoolgirl. She could not believe that both men were willing to wait for her to make a decision. In the meantime, she could be with both of them. Her head felt like it was spinning around and around a bit. Her thoughts and feelings were on hyperdrive at the moment, and she just wasn't sure what had really just happened and how she had made it happen. Dwayne will be here soon to fill in for me. I haven't slept in almost a day and a half. I'll be back first thing tomorrow morning, Hank said. Okay, Allison replied. Hank leaned over and
censored
her and then walked out of the dorm. Carlson sat down at the table as Allison joined him. The Chinese food was getting cold, and she was suddenly hungry enough to eat a horse. So, you finished your work early? Allison asked. Carlson seemed distracted as he unpacked the food from the bag. Yeah. I was able to get things done and turned in my grades. So I am free as a breeze for a bit, Carlson said. Great, Allison replied. She began to dish some rice and veggies onto her plate. She loved Chinese food, and she had not had it in a while. Carlson watched her intently. She knew that he was not quite sold on the arrangement, and she didn't think Hank was either. But she knew that both guys would come around eventually. She would just not allow it to be weird, and she would keep things the way they had been. Allison still was having trouble wrapping her own mind around the fact that this was happening. She had forgotten totally about the phone call she had received earlier. There was someone out there who wanted her dead, but she knew that with Carlson and Hank that she would never be in danger. She knew that her life was about to get very interesting. Chapter 5. You are lying, Sherry Durwood said. You are totally making this up. Allison laughed at the dramatic response of her best friend. The two girls were at Sherry's apartment eating pizza and watching movies on Netflix. They were also about halfway through a 12-pack. Allison had decided to tell Sherry everything about what was going on with Carlson and Hank. She wasn't sure why, but she felt that she needed to tell someone. Probably just so she could make sure that she wasn't dreaming at all, and that the other person could tell her to wake up. Sherry did not believe her at all, which she kind of figured. It's true. I'm not lying, Allison said. The way she said it with a naughty smile and a gleam in her eyes told Sherry everything that she needed to know. She laughed as she watched Sherry's expression turn from disbelief to knowing that it was true. That is the craziest thing I have ever heard, Sherry said. How did you pull that off? You are not Allison. I don't know how you hijacked my friend's body, but you are most definitely not her. Allison laughed as she stuffed more pizza into her mouth. She was usually concerned about her weight, but she was getting to the point where recently she just did not care at all. She was enjoying the new her, but she also wondered if the old her was inside somewhere waiting to reemerge. It's still me, although I'm starting to wonder, Allison said. How did you have the balls to pull that off? Sherry asked. I just opened my mouth and the words came out. I can't explain it. Sherry sat back and looked at her, shaking her head. You have to pick one of them. This isn't right. What? They agreed to it. Besides, I'm going to pick one of them eventually. When? I don't know when, but it might be soon. I just like them both so much in such different ways, Allison said. Is this about what happened to that girl the other night? Did that thing traumatize you so that now you are a completely different person? It's understandable, but do you think you might want to see someone about that? What? You think I need to see a head shrinker? I'm not crazy, Allison said. Well, you aren't crazy yet, Sherry said. Thanks. I appreciate it, Allison replied. The two girls giggled for a minute. Allison shook her head at some of the wild ideas that crossed her crazy friend's mind. Sherry had a steady boyfriend, Josh Grimes, who she had dated for almost 2 years. They weren't officially engaged yet, but it was pretty much a given that they were going to get married after graduation. The two of them were practically inseparable, and they were adorable together. Allison had always envied what they had, and she had always dreamed of having a man to share her life with like Sherry did. But now she had the option to pick one of two amazing men to share that dream with. At this time, she had no idea who to pick or how she would even begin to go about that process. She wished she could just take the best traits from both guys and throw them together into one beautiful man. It would have made her life so much easier. But she was ready to explore the options. She smiled, knowing that Hank was just outside watching Sherry's house. Her roommates had all gone out for the evening, so Sherry had asked Allison if she would come over for some bestie bonding. Allison could not say no, although she suspected that Carlson wanted to do something with her that night. She felt bad telling him that she wanted to hang out with her girlfriend, but he didn't seem that fazed by it. Allison hated that she felt like a creep, playing with two guys. Even though they had agreed to it, she knew it was not fair to either one of them, especially when she herself had no clue who or if she was ever going to pick one of them. The entire thing just made her feel a little bit queasy, but then a moment later, she would feel like she was on top of the world again. The back and forth of emotions was starting to wear on her. She had been so relieved when Sherry had suggested this get-together. They had not hung like this in a while. It was tough with both of their busy schedules, and they both now had other people in their lives who were taking up a bunch of their time. That was one thing that Allison missed about being lonely, the solitude of it. Sometimes it was nice to just tune the world out and be free. So, isn't it weird that one of your boyfriends is outside? Sherry asked. I wouldn't call either of them my boyfriend, and no, it's not weird. Why would it be? Because you are telling me all about the two of them, and the fact that you got two guys who are letting you date the other one, and one of them is just a few feet from us. Allison laughed. As she thought about it, the idea did become a bit weird, and she scolded herself for not realizing it sooner. It is only weird if we make it weird. Like I told them, we just have to let nature take its course. And they bought that crap? Sherry asked. Allison tried not to choke on the last slice of pizza, as she stifled back a laugh. Sherry always made her feel so much better about everything. So, do you really think that killer is out there? Or do you think he is just trying to scare you? I don't know. He has called a few times with those menacing messages, but who knows? I've got Hank to protect me, so I'm not worried. So what was he like in bed? Sherry asked. Sherry. What? You can't say I'm being too personal. We tell each other everything. That is too personal, even for us. Would you tell me how Josh is in bed? Well, it depends on the mood he is in. If he is having a good day, then he has a lot more stamina, and he can just keep going. Stop. I don't want to hear about your
Censored
life, Allison said. Then why did you ask? Are you on crack? No, I'm high on life. You are too much. Allison grabbed another beer. She hardly ever drank, but she felt that she really needed a few cold ones today. She knew that it was just another distraction, just like everything else she was doing right now, but she needed it. If she had to really sit and think, and allow the fear that she felt to become her main state, she would go insane. Who knew how long it would be before the police caught this psycho? So far they had no leads at all. The victim had not known her assailant, and there had been no other eyewitnesses. Allison had gone down to the station accompanied by Hank the other day to give the best recall job that she had to a police sketch artist, but the picture did not really look that much like the guy she saw. It was tough to get an ID that matched a sketch, she thought. She had seen this sort of thing on TV, but she had never been able to tell how a sketch looked like a person. It didn't make sense to her, but still she had done her best. "So, are you going to get the two of them together at the same time?" Sherry asked. "What? Where did that come from?" "I used to watch a lot of Pornhub," Sherry said. "You watch porn?" "I used to, but then I got bored with it. It was really all the same thing with just different people. It got really boring," Sherry said. "That's gross," Allison said. She had watched porn a few times out of curiosity, but it was not at all sexy or interesting to her.
Censored.
Was disgusting to look at, in her opinion. You had to be participating for it to be fun. "Well, are you?" "I don't know. The idea had not actually occurred to me," Allison said. "Why not?" "That was the first thing that popped into my head when you told me that they agreed to both date you," Sherry replied. "Well, that just goes to show how big of a pervert you are. I never claimed to be anything less. And you should totally think about it." Allison looked at Sherry for a moment, before they both burst out laughing until tears rolled down their faces. She had actually not even considered the idea, but now that she was, it sounded extremely exciting, but she didn't know how she could ever bring that up. How do you ask someone that? Allison had made some changes recently, but even that was way beyond her. But what would that be like? How good would it feel to have the two men that she
Censored.
most in the world at the same time? It sounded amazing. She was definitely going to see what might happen with that. Chapter 6. Carlson pushed the barbell off of his
Censored.
completing the final representative with one last vicious grunt to hoist the weight up. His arms were almost locked out, and then he pulled the weight back to the rack and let out a long series of gasps. His head was rushing as he finished the last move of his daily workout regimen. After a few minutes of gathering himself and getting the oxygen back into his body, he pushed himself off of the flat bench, careful not to bang his head on the bar, which he had done more times than he cared to admit, and reached for his water bottle. He took a long gulp, emptying the bottle. He checked his watch and saw it was just after 6 a.m. He had been in the gym since a little after 4. Carlson loved to get a good sweat going in the morning, and it felt good to get in and get out before the rest of the world was awake. The gym was quiet, he didn't have to wait to use machines, and he found that he was able to focus much better without any sort of distractions. He hit the showers, savoring the glorious water cleansing him as it rolled over his body. He preferred the water lukewarm after a hard workout, and his body was still hot. It was such a rush to feel his body cooling down so rapidly that way, while he washed all of the sweat off of him. It also gave him a few minutes of total peace to think about things while he let the water wash over his head. His thoughts drifted to Allison. Sweet Allison. He could remember the day she had first bounded into his classroom, and his heart had skipped several beats. She was so beautiful and sweet-looking, but he could see a detachment in her eyes as if she was hiding from something. He wanted to learn more about her and find out what she was hiding from. He could hardly stop thinking about her right from the start. It was absolutely forbidden for professors and students to see each other romantically, but he was willing to risk it. He knew that she felt some attraction to him. He could see it in her eyes when he called on her in class to join in the discussions. She was so shy she would usually avert her eyes and fumble through the answer that she knew all too well. He was right when he said that she didn't belong in economics. She had the sweet and tortured soul of an artist, and he could see it right away. Carlson had always been great at reading people. Allison was an open book if you looked at her the right way. You just had to know how to dig beneath the surface. Carlson hated to think that he stalked her at all, but if you didn't know better and examined his behavior, you could call it stalking. Really, he was just completely enamored with her, and he was not in a position to do anything about it. He began to delve into her background, which was quite easy for anyone who had access to the internet these days, and he found out about her parents dying and about her trip to Europe where she had become so homesick she had to cut the trip short. He felt a bit sorry for her. She had been through so much, but she was still here and she was still fighting. Carlson knew that Allison didn't belong in his class, even though she was a good student. He realized that he needed to convince her of this, and when she was no longer his student, she was fair game for him to pursue. Allison was so sweet and sexy, but she didn't even realize it. She was the type of rare beauty that is totally oblivious to her own power. That just made him want her even more. But she had changed recently. Carlson figured that it had to do with watching that girl die, and knowing that there was some psycho out there who was trying to kill her. If Carlson got his hands on the bastard that was threatening Allison, he would break him into a million pieces. But Allison had changed. She was now becoming more open and
censored.
He realized that she had not had much experience during their first time together, but she had been so amazing. She felt like she was awkward, but she gave him so much pleasure that he knew that she was the woman of his dreams. He had never felt so close to a woman before, and he'd had to restrain himself from showing her exactly how he felt, out of fear of scaring her off. She needed to know that she could trust him, and that he would move things at her own pace. That was why he had agreed to the arrangement. But he didn't really like it. He doubted that Hank did either, but it was tough to get a read on that guy. If Carlson had no emotional attachments to Allison at all, then he would not mind who else she dated. He had never cared about any of his previous girlfriends or liaisons to that extent. But Allison was different. He knew that he had to make sure that she chose him. He had no idea how involved she really was with Hank. He had caught them having
censored,
and seeing it had been like getting punched in the pit of the stomach in the dark. He had wanted to drop the food he was holding and run out the door. Most guys would want to kick Hank's ass in that position, but he was just doing what came natural to him. Allison obviously wanted it too, so she was just as much to blame. Carlson couldn't believe what he was hearing when Allison had suggested that they both date her. He had never really been involved in a situation like this, especially with a woman that he loved. Carlson had almost balked at the whole thing, but something kept him calm. Maybe it was the gleeful look in Allison's beautiful eyes. He knew that if he didn't do this it would probably hurt her terribly, but if he did do this and in the end she ended up not choosing him, he would be devastated. What was he to do? Before he realized it, he was accepting it without any hesitation. Allison's sweet face was lighting up over the idea, and he found himself almost thinking it was going to be okay. Afterwards, as he thought more about it, he found himself getting a bit paranoid and insecure about the idea. Why should he have to share her? Why couldn't he just tell her that he loved her and that he wanted to be with her? He wasn't totally sure, but for some reason he felt that he might lose her completely if he did that. There was no logical reason he could see as to why he should feel that way, but he did. It was all tearing his mind to pieces, and he found that he was even starting to have trouble sleeping. On top of that, he had not been able to see Allison for a few days. She had been spending time with her friend Sherry, or so she said, and she had not had time for him. He was starting to feel a bit like a punk, but he shrugged it off the best he could. The question he kept asking himself was that if she wanted them both to date her, then what was stopping him from dating other women as well? He knew that there was nothing really stopping him, except for the fact that he was completely in love with Allison, and he would probably be so racked with guilt over being with another woman, that it would consume him entirely. Would Allison care? Would she be hurt if she found him with another woman? What would she really think if the tables were turned on her that way? He had been keeping these feelings in check, because he realized that Allison was working through a trauma, and that it was manifesting itself into a weird and bizarre thing. He knew that she was not quite herself. Or was she? Maybe she had finally found the real her, and she was not going to be the shy, sensitive artist that he had fallen in love with. He had to admit he liked the idea of her being more sexually adventurous and more in control in the bedroom, every guy's fantasy, but at what price? Carlson headed out to his truck, and started it up. He felt strange now that he did not have any work to do today. Just like the kids, he got a month off between semesters when there was nothing going on. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do today, but he was hoping that he would see Allison. He felt like texting her, but he didn't want to wake her up at this hour. He just wanted to talk to her and see how she was. He wanted to see her and maybe spend the day together, but he wasn't sure if she would feel smothered that way. The more he thought about that, though, the more he realized that was not really a problem. He knew that Allison was scared and that she wanted the company. She had not spent any time alone really since the murder. But Hank was her personal bodyguard. Carlson wasn't sure how weird it might be with Hank just outside the door or hanging in his car, knowing that Carlson was there. If he and Allison got intimate, Carlson wondered if he would be thinking about Hank being with her and what he had seen. It was all such a mess. Why was Allison doing this to him? Did she even realize what was happening? Was she beyond really seeing outside of herself at the moment? He had to see her. He had to know what she was thinking. 2 hours later, Carlson and Allison were having a nice breakfast at his place. He had sent her a text message and told her to come over. On the way home from the gym, Carlson had picked up some eggs, pancakes, sausage, and bacon. After Allison accepted his invitation, he whipped up a huge breakfast of greatness. Carlson was not a chef by any means, but he had always prided himself on making some kick-ass breakfasts. The second she opened the door, he wrapped his arms around her and
censored
her. The taste of her lips was like electricity sending waves of
censored
rolling through him. She was the only woman who had ever affected him that severely. From a mere
censored,
he was weak in the knees. That had not happened to him since he was 14, and he had lost his virginity to Lacey Shepard, who lived down the block. Lacey was 17, and she had decided to make a man out of him. Carlson mowed her family's lawn once a week every summer, and had for 3 summers by then. He had noticed Lacey, and had noticed her getting hotter every year. She had caught him leering at her a few times, and he had not cared. He smiled and winked at her every time. The arrogance of being 14 was always a lot of fun, he thought. He never imagined a girl that hot or that much older than him would have ever dreamed of sleeping with him. But it happened. One day he was mowing her yard, and her parents were out of town for the weekend. She came outside and offered for him to come inside for some lemonade. He remembered entering the cool house, drinking a large glass of lemonade, and then Lacey grabbing his hand. He had no idea what was going on, but she led him upstairs. He had been very nervous, but excited at the same time. Even today, he could remember his first experience as if it had been yesterday. It had only happened the one time, and he and Lacey never really talked about it at all. But every time he mowed her parents' lawn, she and he would lock eyes and cast a sweet smile. He thanked her to this day for taking the time to show him the ropes. Allison was hungrier than he had ever seen her. She practically wolfed the food down at first. He smiled at the way she was enjoying the huge breakfast he had prepared. He was glad to see her eating. He knew that she was probably paranoid about not being a size 6, but he didn't care. He loved her the way she was, and actually preferred her that way. Most men preferred women who were curvy and voluptuous, not rail thin. He wished that more women would realize that, and bankrupt the diet industry. "I'm glad the food was a success," Carlson said. Allison smiled after gulping some coffee. "Thanks. I have had such a ravishing appetite lately," Allison said. "Well, I enjoy watching you eat." "I enjoy watching you do anything," Carlson said. "You are going to make me blush again," Allison replied. "I love the way you look when blushing." Allison began to blush and look away. "Damn it," she smiled. Carlson had to laugh at that. He finished up his own eggs, and tried not to belch from the pressure of his full belly. "I've missed you," Carlson said. He hated that he said that the moment it slipped out, but he was feeling so good being with Allison. It felt like it had been forever since he had seen her. Now seeing her beautiful face right there beside him, he had to fight the urge to just hold her closely and feel her warmth. I've missed you too. I've been pretty busy, Allison said. Yeah. You and your friend enjoy your time together? Oh yeah. We haven't really had time to see each other that much recently. You guys are pretty close? Carlson asked. Yeah, she's like a sister. I know the feeling. I have a friend named Keith I grew up with, who lives back in Ohio. I don't get to see him nearly enough. That's tough. When I first came to college, me and Sherry just became fast friends, and she has helped me through a lot. Carlson poured them both more coffee. So, how have you been sleeping? Carlson asked. Off and on. Not nearly as much as I wish I could, but I'm still having the nightmares. Do the cops have any further leads on anything? No, but Hank says they are getting close. You think they really are? I have my doubts. I think Hank is really just trying to make me feel better. Maybe, Carlson said. There was silence for a good minute, but Carlson didn't feel it was the least bit awkward. He was just enjoying being with Allison. So, what do you want to do now? Allison asked. Carlson thought for a moment. Then he had a great idea. This is amazing, Allison said as she cheered. Carlson smiled. He was glad that he had thought of this. Allison was having a blast. The fighter for the Dragons was clearly winning over the fighter for the Lions team. The two guys were giving it all they had, but it was obvious that they were both pretty gassed out. Carlson figured that if the fighter for the Dragons did not win the next point fast, then neither fighter was going to make it to the end of the time limit. Carlson had been coming to these matches on Saturday mornings at a gym outside of town for a few years. It was always the first and third Saturday of every month, and they started at 10 in the morning. He used to compete in martial arts tournaments, and he was seriously thinking about getting back into it again. He still trained and went to the dojo several times a week, but the thrill of competition had escaped him for a while. Ever since the last fight he'd had, it had gone a bit sour, and he had caught the other fighter with a hard kick to the side of the head. He had been aiming for a medium-strength kick, just enough to get the point, which is what you were supposed to be aiming for, but the other fighter had stepped forward as Carlson went into his movement, and he had hit the guy wrong. He was unconscious for several minutes. Carlson found out later the guy had a concussion and a bleed in his brain. The fighter had to retire. He felt terrible, the guilt eating him up from the inside, so he had decided not to fight anymore for a while. That had been a few years ago. But now he was starting to get the itch again. The fighters went into their stances and started to mix it up. Charlie, the fighter for the Dragons, blocked a hard kick and sidestepped it while bringing his hand over top to connect with the other fighter's chin. The man went down and the match was over. The fighters were both unhurt and shook hands. It had been a long, grueling battle with a lot of blocked hits, but Charlie had won 3-0. Carlson had always dreamed of getting a team together at the college. It would have been fun and an excellent way to incorporate those classes into a regular part of the curriculum, and also another sport for the school. As of right now, the self-defense classes were only loosely based on solid martial arts, and they were only given a few nights a week for a month each semester. They weren't even available for class credit. He hated that the university didn't offer that. Wow, this is so cool, Allison said. She stuffed popcorn into her face. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, Carlson said. You think you could beat those guys' asses? I'm not sure now. Back when I was competing, I might have had a shot. Why did you stop? Carlson told Allison the whole story. He wasn't sure what she might think about him after hearing the story, but he decided that he didn't want to hide from it. He wanted to be open with her. He knew that this would bring the two of them closer together, and that it would lead to her realizing that she felt the same about him as he did about her. At least that was his thinking. Wow, that is rough. But it wasn't your fault. Besides, in fighting, stuff like that happens, right? With this type of competition, it isn't supposed to happen. We aren't fighting for prizes here. Well, unless you count a plastic trophy. It really is just a step up from sparring. It's all about winning on points. I see. I'm not sure if I could ever do anything like that, Allison said. Oh, sure you could. I'm certain that I could teach you some moves, and it would make you a very dangerous person, Carlson said. Allison smiled. I'd be hazardous to myself. Carlson laughed. Allison had the best sense of humor of any woman he had ever known. You were able to see that once you got past her shyness and got to know the real her. He leaned over and
censored
her. Then he wrapped his arm around her and held her close. She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. It felt so good to feel her warmth so close to him. The second that she touched him in any way, he just felt a surge of warm feelings rising up inside of him. He knew it was lame, but he was finally starting to understand cheesy Hollywood romantic comedies. Well, I will have to teach you sometime if you are interested. I might be if you think I can learn. Of course you can. I'm sure of it. You can do anything you set your mind to. I love your faith in me, Allison said. I actually went ahead and took your advice. I changed my major officially. That's fantastic. Yep. Now we don't have to keep our forbidden love such a secret anymore, Allison said. Well, that is a huge relief, Carlson said. He stretched the words out for false dramatic effect, which elicited a sweet giggle from Allison. I am excited about it. I might actually start to really enjoy college now, Allison said. That is what it's all about. I know people who don't figure out they are in the wrong thing until they've graduated college and been working in that field for 10 years. It is a horrible way to waste a big chunk of your life. I have actually been thinking about doing this for a while, but I just needed someone to really push me towards it. I thank you for that, Allison said. You don't need to thank me, baby, Carlson said. He
censored
her sweetly and placed his forehead against hers. I love it when you call me baby, she said. Carlson didn't actually remember calling her baby, but he was sure that he must have at some point. At any rate, it was nice to hear that she was so accepting of his compliments and charms. It made him feel like she was getting closer and closer to choosing him. So, is there another match after this? Allison asked. Yeah, there are a few more. Do you want to stay and watch? I do. Allison smiled widely. After the martial arts tournament, they decided to check out a movie. They both agreed that nothing really looked good from what was playing, but Carlson hit on the idea of taking her to the Town Square Cinema, which showed strictly older movies. He checked their website, and it looked like they were actually showing a Gregory Peck marathon. Oh, he is like one of my all-time favorites, Allison exclaimed. Carlson was shocked. You know who Gregory Peck is? You like the classics? I watch more classics than I do new stuff. They were just done so much better, Allison said. I thought I was the only one around here who thought that, Carlson said. Carlson headed over towards the center of town, where the town square was located. Suddenly, he saw something in his rear view. At first he thought someone was following them, until he realized that someone was following them. Hank was now right behind them. He had forgotten all about Hank, or the fact that he chaperoned Allison's every move. Doesn't Hank ever take a day off? Not often, but he does. He alternates days though. It's kind of weird. Just when he feels that he needs some rest, he gets someone to cover for him, Allison said. Doesn't he know that if you are with me, it's not necessary for him to follow your every move? He is just doing his job, Allison said. I doubt he would be this motivated with anyone else he was supposed to be protecting, Carlson said. Well, he does have a bit more of an interest in me, I guess, Allison said. Does that bother you? Carlson wanted to tell her how much it did, but he decided not to. He had to keep playing along. Not at all, he said. Maybe he had laid that one on a bit thick. It's okay, you can be honest. I don't expect you to not be a little bit jealous, Allison said. Well, while we are on the subject, why do you want us to be jealous? Is this a weird game for you? Carlson could feel himself getting a bit hot. He needed to back down a bit. No. I've told you both how I feel. Yeah, you've told us how you feel, but it seems like you are just having too much fun with this. Am I supposed to apologize for having fun with the men I care about? Allison said. It seems like you are just playing the both of us and that you aren't taking either of us seriously, Carlson replied. Allison paused a moment, and he thought he might have actually hurt her feelings. She seemed like she might be about to cry in a moment. I'm not doing anything like that. Do you have any idea how it feels to be scared out of your mind every second of every day? Do you have any idea what I'm going through? No, I don't. I can't pretend like I do, but I've tried to be understanding here. Then you need to try a little harder. I am not sure why I can't pick between the two of you, and I don't know why I've been feeling so out of character lately, but I do know that it is helping me stay sane. If I have to think about the psycho who is waiting in the wings to kill me another second, I'm going to go mad. Tears began to form in Allison's eyes. She wiped them away with the back of her hand and tried to swallow the cry back down. Carlson felt a twinge of guilt hit him in the
censored.
What had he done? He had done what he swore that he was not going to do. He had told her how he felt, and he had allowed himself to get angry. He knew the stress that she was under, and he could not pretend to know exactly how she was feeling. Look, honey. I'm sorry. I know that you are dealing with some shit, but you need to know that you can trust me. You don't need to date two men just to make yourself feel safe. I don't know if it's even that anymore. I have told you that I can't decide. It is like my heart truly wants the both of you in my life, and I know it's not fair to either one of you, but that is the way it has to be for now. I'm sorry if you can't accept that. I can accept it. I can force myself to accept it. As a rational person, I can rationalize myself into thinking just about anything and be okay with it. I know you need time to make your decision, but you have to realize that the longer you go caring about both of us, unable to make that choice, the harder it is going to be. Allison looked at him. He saw a maturity and a sophistication in her eyes right then that he had never seen before. He was thinking that his words might have actually hit home for a minute, and that maybe she was starting to see his side of things. I know. I'm doing the best I can. Carlson wrapped his arm around Allison's shoulders and pulled her close. I know. I know. As he glanced over to the end of the room, he could clearly see Hank standing there. He had a strange look on his face that was tough to decipher. Carlson could not tell if he was happy or angry. Maybe a little of both. Chapter 7. When they finally got back to her dorm room, Allison had to admit she was a bit wired. She had not slept much the night before, and had relied on cup after cup of coffee to stay awake and catch up on some of her reading. She had hundreds of paperback books that she never thought she would be able to read in a lifetime, but she was determined to make it through them. She had become addicted to library sales and to yard sales that sold cheap paperbacks, and she had bought them by the boxful a few summers ago. She had decided that she wanted to read for at least an hour a day on weekdays, and 2 hours a day on weekends without fail, and she had stuck to this plan fairly religiously. In the past 2 years, she had made it through over 200 books. She felt very proud of herself, but the collection continued to grow. She realized that she had an addiction and needed some help here. The martial arts tournament had been amazing, and she definitely saw herself attending regularly. She had always enjoyed watching UFC and other martial arts stuff on television, but she had never been to a real fight and watched it up close and personal. She realized this was not the sort of thing that women were usually into, and she did not have a violent bone in her body, but something about watching those sexy gladiators go to war in that ring was intoxicating and got her going. Carlson had not spoken much since they left the tournament. She could not tell if he was mad about the conversation they'd had, or if he was just a bit frustrated by everything. She knew how he felt, and she had tried to communicate to him that she had not wanted to hurt him or Hank, and she had never wanted to play them the way he claimed she was. She didn't see it that way, and she took offense to it, but she was willing to let it go if he was. He seemed like he had calmed down a bit, even if he was being super quiet right now. She grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and offered Carlson one too. She collapsed on the couch and just enjoyed the peace and quiet for a few minutes. Sometimes she loved to turn out all the lights in her apartment and just sit there in the dark, enjoying the quiet. Somehow everything seemed quieter in the dark, and there was a sweet peace and serenity to it all. She loved it and always had. But she had not done that in a while. Not since the murder. She tried to avoid the dark at all costs now. She could just see the killer waiting in the shadows to strike at her, and she would never see him coming. I don't want you to think I'm trying to push you at all. This is kind of a new situation for me, Carlson said. I know. Me too. It's weird. I'll give you that. I'm not sure what is going on with me, but I'm trying to get a handle on it. I know you are. I appreciate all of the work you are doing on that, Carlson said. Allison was thankful that he acknowledged the fact that she was trying. He was a good man, and she knew that he cared deeply for her. He had not told her exactly how deeply he did care for her, but she was pretty sure he did. The way he looked at her, and the way he was always worried about her, was easy to see. Thanks, Allison said. A knock came at her door just then. Allison answered it to find Hank standing in the doorway. He sauntered into the room, surveying the scene. Is everything okay here? Hank asked. Allison was a bit perplexed by the question. Yeah, everything is fine. Why? I saw you crying at the karate tournament. I was just curious as to why you were so upset, Hank said. It was a private conversation between her and I. So you can just mind your own business, Carlson said. Allison could see the fire in his eyes. She had a thought that things could get out of hand here. Oh, I believe that what happens to her is my business. If she is upset because of something you did or said, I want to know about it. Carlson stood up as Hank came towards him. The two men were standing eye to eye in each other's faces, neither one backing down. Is that so? You've got some nerve on you, man, Carlson said. Don't make me beat you into the middle of next week, Hank said. Allison had never seen Hank really angry, and now that she was, it was rather frightening. But she knew that Carlson was very well trained in martial arts, and that he could probably take Hank out before he could even blink. As exciting as it sounded to see these two men fighting in front of her, she was not going to let it escalate that far. Go ahead and try it, Carlson said. Hey guys. Chill out, Allison said, stepping between them. The two men moved back slightly, and Allison suddenly felt a rush wash over her. She looked from one man to the other, and then she leaned over and
censored
Carlson. And then she leaned the other way to
censored
Hank. The thought of
censored
both men at once was dizzying, and the way their lips felt in contrast to each other was mesmerizing. She could not believe that this was about to happen right now, but she was going for it. It had been a fantasy she had been thinking about non-stop since Sherry had suggested it, but she realized now that it was a fantasy she'd had for a long time. The idea of being with two men at once was so wrong on so many levels, and it sounded like a true piece of paradise to her.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
The three of them lay on the bed together with Allison in between them. She felt as safe and secure as she had ever imagined she could feel. What had just happened had been the most pleasurable moment of her life, and she was still tempted to pinch herself to make sure she was not dreaming. As they all drifted off to sleep, she found herself wondering how this had happened and why. Was she supposed to see that murder for a reason? Was that terrible tragedy somehow going to be the key that opened up her life and her destiny? Was it all just a big coincidence? Chapter 8. I am so jealous. Sherry squealed. Allison had to laugh because she had to agree that Sherry was right to feel jealous. She was jealous of herself, and it had actually happened to her. Since she, Carlson, and Hank had all made love together, Allison had not been able to get it out of her mind. She felt that every act of lovemaking should be that way. She wasn't sure the boys would be up for doing it again together like that, though. They had not really communicated too much to her about the experience. She knew that there was a lot of animosity between the two of them, but they both wanted her, and they both would do what she needed of them. But she wasn't sure how much longer this would continue, or if the threesome would ever happen again. "I can't believe that happened to you. How in the world did you do it?" Sherry asked. "I don't know. It just happened, really. I'm not sure you can really plan it, or you can go out and look for this sort of thing. It's kind of bizarre, and I don't know if it will happen again." "Oh, you don't want it again? I thought you loved it?" "I did. I absolutely want it to happen all the time, but the guys are going to get sick of the sharing. I don't think they enjoyed it as much as I did, or at least not the idea of the three-way. Guys are so insecure. They always talk about doing stuff like that, but when the opportunity presents itself, they always shut it down. They are just too insecure." "Do you think they were comparing themselves to each other and psyching each other out or distracting each other?" Allison laughed. That idea had not occurred to her, but it sounded like a winner. "I'm not sure. It is possible, I guess." "I am so happy for you," Sherry said. "You don't think Josh would ever go for a three-way with you?" Allison asked. "Are you kidding? He won't even use urinals because he can't pee next to another guy." Allison giggled. She could just imagine Josh being too shy to be
censored
with another guy present. It was funny. "So are you sure you can keep up the momentum with having two men in your life? It sounds like a lot of fun, but it also sounds like you will eventually burn yourself out," Sherry said. "I don't know. You're right, it is a lot of fun, but I don't know if I can really keep going this way for much longer. My emotions are starting to get all funny and a little confused." "How so?" "Well, Carlson told me that it would be harder to make this decision the longer I waited, and I think he was right. Now I'm starting to get a bit panicky about it all, because I honestly don't know who or what I want." "Seems like Carlson has your number pretty well," Sherry said. "Yeah. He has this way with words that opens up my mind to allow me to face some of the fears I have buried inside. He sees right through me." "What about Hank?" "Hank and I haven't had any conversations like that. I know he cares about me and I know he wants to be with me, but he is so cool and tough to read. He keeps his emotions buried like I do. So I have no idea how he really feels." "Well, to me it sounds like Carlson is willing to tell you how he feels, and he is willing to open up. And on top of that, he is able to get you to open up as well. I think that says a lot about two people who are together. When the proper communication isn't there, then the whole thing eventually falls apart. You need someone who will call you on your bullshit and who you can call on theirs." "I know. I've been thinking the same thing, but I guess I just needed to hear it from someone else." "That's what I'm here for," Sherry said. "So, I guess I have a decision to make," Allison replied. "Well, if you think now is the right time to make that decision. It's up to you if you want to wait longer. It looks like the guys are willing to. I'm not so sure that they are. I feel like if I keep swinging them along, waiting for me to make up my own mind, that I'm going to lose one or both of them." "Well, then I guess you had better make that decision quickly." Allison leaned back on the couch and closed her eyes. She wished that she could just take a super long nap and make everything all right again. Somehow she just didn't think that was going to cut it right now. Allison thought about this as she drove home. Hank was not following behind her today. Instead, she had his replacement for the day, Eddie. Hank had finally decided to take a little bit of time for himself, but she knew that he had probably taken a 2-hour nap and spent the rest of the day at the office trying to get a handle on the case. Allison had not heard from the killer again since the last phone call, so she counted her blessings on that. She was wondering if maybe the dork had gone into hiding completely and realized that he was not going to get close to her. She had not been able to help the cops find him so far, so if he stayed underground he would probably never be found. The thought terrified her, because what happened when he decided to hurt someone else? Was that her fault in some way? Was she to blame for not being a better witness? She tried to ignore that line of thinking and get those thoughts out of her head. She wasn't sure what she was hoping to accomplish by beating herself up that way, but her mind wanted to go there at the moment. She wanted to find a way to feel safer for herself, without having to live in a bubble and rely on anyone else. It was getting to be too much. Allison knew that she cared a great deal about both Carlson and Hank, but she did not know if it was all based on the way she felt about them, or if it was based on the fact that she felt scared and felt like she needed them. There had to be a way for her to feel safe on her own again. She realized that she had not felt truly safe or secure since her father had died. When you lose both parents, even as an adult, it changes the way you perceive the world. You suddenly feel like it is all up to you, and you do not have that safety net there for you, in case you fail and you need that backup. It is not there any longer. That is terribly frightening, no matter how old you get. And then when her life had been placed in real danger, it was too much for her to handle. That was why she was being this way, and that was why she was not allowing herself to be alone in any capacity. She had two men in her life who did not deserve to have their time with her split. Allison knew that she had a decision to make. But first, she was going to have to get things secure for herself. Allison winced with the recoil of the gun, and struggled to hold onto it as the vibrations fluttered up and down her arms. The gun flew up in the air pointing at the ceiling, but she still managed to keep control of it and lower it back down to her target. She fired again. Even through the ear protection, she could hear the force of the blast echoing off the walls of the gun range. She could only imagine the ringing in the ears if she wasn't wearing them. It would probably last for days, and she would not be able to think clearly for the roar in her head. Hank smiled at her as he watched her in action. He had been happy to help her with this particular project, and he had even seemed somewhat glad that she was doing this. Allison figured since he was a cop, he had probably had some extensive firearm training at one point. He had taken her to the gun shop to buy the right gun for her. Once at the range, he had shown her step by step the procedure for properly firing a gun that a lot of people never bothered to learn. That was one of the reasons why he responded to so many accidental deaths caused by firearms. People did not take the time to learn how to use them effectively. Allison thought she was actually getting the hang of it. Hank was a great teacher. He was patient and thorough, and she was very impressed with his shooting skills. Before she had squeezed off a round, he had slowly moved through the motions so she could see it in action, and then he had put a big hole right through the center of the target where he had hit the same target repeatedly as he emptied the clip. Okay, now this time don't pull the trigger so hard. Just give it a nice easy squeeze. And you will get used to the recoil. Eventually it won't even bother you, Hank said. Okay, Allison replied, taking her stance once again. She slowly squeezed the trigger and felt the shot go off nice and smoothly. She hit the target almost in the center. She was stoked and felt like doing a victory dance, but she decided not to with a loaded gun in her hand. Good, Hank said. Allison continued until the clip was empty, and then she sat the gun down while Hank pushed the button to bring the target over to them. She had only missed a few shots. Way to go, Hank said. Pretty soon I'll be asking for your protection. I'd be happy to do that for you, Allison joked back. She had not spoken to Hank or Carlson about their shared experience together since it happened, and she was not sure that now was the time to bring it up, but she was so curious as to what each guy thought about the experience. On one hand, she was not sure that the guys were up for repeating it, because neither one had mentioned anything about it, but then again, maybe they were just being guys. This probably wasn't the sort of thing they wanted to talk about. Allison finished firing off a few more clips, and decided she was done for the day. Her arms were starting to get a bit numb, and she wanted to go home and catch a good nap. She had not been sleeping well, but she felt tired enough and at peace enough that she thought she could possibly get some good sleep for a bit. She had ridden with Hank, and on the way back, she thought it might be the right time to have the conversation about the threesome. She wasn't sure how to bring it up exactly, but after a few minutes of mulling it over, she just wanted to blurt it out. So that is what she did. So, what did you really think of the other day when we all had
censored
together? Hank acted like he was going to choke for a second, and looked at her with a strange look in his eyes. She was instantly regretting that she had even said anything, but she did not take back the question. It was out there, and she wanted an answer. Hank was going to talk to her. I thought it was fine, Hank said. Just fine? You guys haven't mentioned a word about it, and it's like the elephant in the room. I thought it was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced, and I was hoping that we could do it again. I'm not so sure, Hank said. Why? Well, it is one thing to have a relationship with you, and to know that there is another guy you are involved with, but to actually see each other doing the act of love with you, and to be participating was strange. You guys seemed to be enjoying it at the time. Yeah, when you are worked up and you are in the moment, it's easy to let things go and ignore them, but when you take a bit of time to reflect on it, then you can see things clearly and you know what you want or don't want. So, you don't want to do that again? Seeing another man making love to you, even though I was there too, was not my cup of tea. It might be different if emotions weren't involved, but both of us love you, and I know that Carlson would probably tell you the same thing. I doubt he wants to rekindle that experience. I don't get it. I found it to be the single greatest and most pleasurable thing I have ever experienced. Well, you are running the show. We have allowed you to be in control that way, and to take your time on deciding who you want. But that group
censored
experience might have just pointed the way for you to be forced to make that decision you have been so reluctant to make. I know, I've been trying. It's just not easy. Well, maybe the gun training will help you with that, Hank said. How do you mean? Well, you should feel a lot safer knowing that you can protect yourself if you have to. I'm not sure I'm ready. Not after one lesson at the range. You are a lot more ready than you were a few hours ago. Allison thought a moment. He was right. She was not going to be able to use safety as an excuse anymore. She was going to have to do some heavy soul-searching to find out what her heart really wanted, and stick with that. She was excited at the idea. It was time. Chapter 9. Allison rolled over in bed and laid her arm across Carlson's broad.
censored
She could feel the faint beating of his heart through his thickly muscled pecs. Every now and then, she would glide her finger over his tight
censored
and watch them get a little hard. She could also feel his penis getting harder too, but she decided to let it rest a little while. They both needed some rest anyway. It had been a sweet evening. They had gone out to dinner at La Graza, a fancy Mexican restaurant in town, and then they had gone dancing after that. Hank was on the job and had tailed them. Allison had been tempted to drag him onto the dance floor, but something told her that he just didn't dance much. So she was going to have to just hang with Carlson tonight, which had just been really perfect. After dancing, they had decided to check into a nice hotel in town just for the fun of it. The place had a swimming pool for all the guests, and the room Carlson had reserved as a surprise came with a large jacuzzi. As soon as she sank into the hot water of the jacuzzi, she felt years of stress just fade away, evaporating out of her. This was just what the doctor ordered, and she couldn't believe that Carlson had gone to all this trouble to make it happen. She appreciated that like nothing else, and she hoped he realized that. The two of them had sipped champagne and relaxed together, enjoying the evening. Allison especially needed the rest and the relaxation. She had not realized how tense her entire body and mind had been with the stress of the past few weeks. I can't believe you did all this to surprise me, Allison said. Carlson smiled at her. I have some of my ninja ways. So, are you ready for the new semester to start up? Allison asked. I'm not really. I've been enjoying the break, and I'm glad I still have a few weeks left. It has to be the best gig, Allison said. What? Being a college professor. You have really short hours, and you get to talk about something you are passionate about. That has to be a pretty sweet arrangement. Carlson thought for a moment, as if he had never heard it put quite that way before. Yeah, I'd say you are right. Allison felt weird for bringing this up, but she wanted to get Carlson's take on things, just to compare. So, what did you think about the threesome? Carlson looked at her, expressionless for a few moments. Well, I thought it was fine. I thought it was interesting. Have you ever done that before? No, not that way. Oh, sounds like a story there, Allison said with a smile. Not really. I was in college, and a few times I managed to convince a few drunk ladies to go to bed with me at the same time. That is such a typical guy response to that. Why? I'm sure being with two men was just as thrilling for you as being with two women is for a man. Allison paused a moment. I guess I can see your point. Yeah, so don't go pointing fingers, Carlson joked. After the hot tub, they made sweet love to each other. It had been emotional and intense, leaving both of them completely drained and exhausted. As much as she had enjoyed the threesome, Allison had to admit that she did not miss Hank being there this time. She had really thought that after that it would feel like there was something missing, but she had really enjoyed just having that strong connection with Carlson and just being with him. She wanted to give herself to him completely. It was during this lovemaking that she knew that she had made up her mind. She wanted to be with Carlson. As much as she cared about Hank and as attracted to him as she had felt an instant love for Carlson, and it had grown from a small spark to what it was now. She knew it then, and she had allowed her brain to become clouded to the truth that was right in front of her the entire time. She just wanted to be with him. Laying in the bed right there with Carlson, hearing his soft breathing while he was deep in the throes of sleep, she knew. It all seemed so simple and so clear to her now. She had to be with him, and she would never allow anything to come between them. Allison hardly even thought about Hank, who was just outside in his car. It had seemed weird to not invite him up at all, but then again, this was special time just for the two of them, and they had not room for a third wheel. She hated to think of Hank that way, but that was truly what he was, and she knew that. As she thought more about it, she had really known this all along, but now she was allowing herself to face her own fears and realize it. She and Hank were not to be. It was going to be her and Carlson. That was right. We have him, Hank said. Allison was barely awake and cradling the phone in her hand. The sunlight blaring through the window stung her eyes, and she had to force her achy bones to move out of the way. She stood up out of bed shakily, and eventually made her way over to a chair. What is going on? Allison asked. We have the man who killed that girl, and the man who has been harassing you with threats. Allison was instantly awake. What? How? It was actually pure dumb luck. He was stopped by an officer on a routine traffic stop after he ran a red light. The officer thought he smelled pot coming from the car, and when he investigated the car, he found a bunch of burglary paraphernalia, as well as drugs. So they brought him in and he matched the sketch you provided. He also had a disposable phone that he had been using to call you with. They ran the number and the phone records matched. He is our guy, Hank said. Oh my God. That is amazing. Allison said. She felt the relief washing over her in a wave of good feelings. She felt a little faint from the rush of it all. Carlson came out of the bathroom right then. He was
censored
and brushing his teeth. He seemed concerned. What is going on? Carlson asked. It's Hank. They found him. That's great. Why didn't he knock on the door? He is at the station, Allison said. Hank had not told her where he was actually, but she could hear the hustle and bustle of the police station in the background. We are all very excited down here to have found this guy. We believe now he may be linked to as many as 6 other murders in the state, Hank said. Oh my God. I can't believe this. What a relief that he is off the streets. Yeah, I just wanted to call you to let you know. I figured you now have a great reason to celebrate, Hank said. Thanks. Allison ended the call and leaned back in the chair. Tears began to stream down from her eyes, as all of the stress and all of the fear that had been tearing her up for weeks just began to evaporate. It was almost too much to handle, and she found herself on stress overload. She almost felt like she was going to hyperventilate and pass out. The room was starting to spin, and she had to focus on taking long, steady breaths. Hey, are you okay, honey? Carlson asked. He wrapped his arm around her. Just his contact, and the way that she felt herself immediately begin to calm down, was confirmation that she was making the right choice. She wanted to be with him. She had known that from the start. Why had she allowed her mind to become so twisted? She almost cried as she thought about the pain that she had put Carlson through. Did Hank say much else about who the killer was? Carlson asked. No. Maybe there is something about it on TV. Carlson flipped on the television and turned to the local news station. Sure enough, it was the top story. The killer was a man named Roger Woodruff. He was a drifter who was said to have been connected to up to 6 other murders. Watching the man being led away in handcuffs, Allison felt a strong sense of relief and anger. To think that man had put her through this much hell, and that man had taken the lives of several women for no reason. She hoped they fried him twice. Allison turned off the TV. She couldn't bear to look at it anymore. She grabbed a bottle of water out of the fridge and chugged half of it. She needed the release. The emotions rolling through her head were like a whirlwind that she could not explain. She wanted to laugh and cry, and she wanted to run and scream all at the same time. She had wished that Roger would come for her so she could have filled him full of holes, but she also knew that she probably would have frozen and not done anything but get herself killed. Sending him to prison for 20 years, when he might finally be executed, would have been a waste of time and money. All of that was too good for him. Hey, it's okay. You are safe now. He is gone where he can never hurt you or any other woman ever again, Carlson said. He wrapped his strong arms around her, and she relaxed back against him. He knew exactly what she needed, and when she needed it. That was why he was so perfect for her. Allison relaxed and took a few deep breaths. She did not know exactly why she was crying. Her senses were being flooded with so many different emotions that she was just unable to deal with it all. She knew that she should have been ecstatic to know that the pain and the torment was over. There was no reason to be afraid anymore. She could go back to living her normal life and starting over at school. Everything was going to be great. She was even in love with the most amazing man she had ever known, and he was crazy about her as well. Was she upset about Hank? Was this signaling the end of her relationship with him? It was, but it wasn't. She had already decided that she was going to be with Carlson, and the moment that happened, she had stopped being anything to Hank. She was going to have to tell him and let him down gently. She was not sure how to do that. It had never been a problem for her before. She had never had to dump someone. She was already feeling lousy about it. The worst thing that was going through her mind, she figured, was the fact that she had been through so much stress and strain, even though she tried to hide it, and that now she was not going to have to bury that pain anymore. She could let it go and be done with it. But to do that, it had to pass through, and she had to acknowledge that the pain was really there. Thanks for being by my side through all this, Allison said. She wiped the tears from her eyes. Hey, that's what I'm here for. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I'm glad to hear that because it's you. What? Carlson asked. It's always been you. I'm so sorry I put you through all of this, but I needed to discover something about myself. What this monster did to my mind was mortifying, and now that it's over, I'm finally starting to see things clearly again. I love you, Carlson. Carlson pulled her close and
censored
her softly. She felt the compassion, the love, the joy, and the sweetness behind the gesture. She could taste all of that on his lips at that moment. She never wanted it to end, but she was okay with a brief intermission. She knew that there would be plenty of encores. She knew now that the time had come to tell Hank about everything. She had to think of just the right way to put things. It was not going to be easy, but she was sure that she would handle it okay. Chapter 10. Allison waited for Hank at the coffee shop anxiously. She had told him that she'd made a decision, and that they needed to talk. She had originally intended to take him out to dinner as a thank you for all of the hard work he had put in practically around the clock to watch over her during these past few weeks, but with the news she was getting ready to spring on him, she considered that to be a bit odd and maybe even rude. Or maybe it would have been the way to go. Now that she was there, she was just not sure she was making the right decision. She kind of missed the other her at times like these. She would have been carefree and unfeeling about the whole thing, because she had stuffed her emotions so far down that it was a miracle she had been able to return without a few months of deep cognitive therapy. Luckily, the mask was thinner than she thought, and the old Allison returned with a bang. But so did the neuroses and the anxiety that had made her such a nervous wreck before, but she was happy now. That was the most important thing. Hank sat down and ordered a coffee from the waitress. The diner was practically empty, so they would be getting fairly prompt service. "Hey, how are you?" Hank asked. "I'm good." "A lot better since there is no one who is trying to kill you?" Hank asked with a smile. Allison had rarely seen him smile. It was a good look for him. Yeah. That was really putting a damper on things. "So, what did you want to talk about?" Hank asked. Allison thought for a moment. Finally, she ignored every impulse that was telling her to run for the hills, and just went with it. "I have made a decision." "About?" Hank asked. Allison wanted to look at him like he was a joker for making this harder. He had to know what she was talking about, didn't he? Maybe not, he was a man after all. "About us. I have made a decision about what I want." A serious look crossed Hank's face. The waitress sat his coffee down, and he sipped at it gingerly. "Okay. What have you decided?" Hank asked. "You are an amazing guy, and I would not have made it through all of this without you, but I have to follow my heart. And I have to be with Carlson." Hank looked at her. His steel eyes stared right through her for several seconds, and at first she was afraid he had not really heard her. She didn't know how long she should wait before speaking again. She wanted to wait for him to digest everything she had just said, but it was unclear whether or not that was happening right now. Finally, Hank spoke. "I understand how you feel. I have to say I'm a bit shocked and I am deeply saddened, but I do respect your wishes." Allison breathed a sigh of relief. Hank was taking this so well. She had not imagined it going down this easily in her mind. She had instead pictured him becoming irate and telling her what an awful mistake she had made. But she realized now how silly that scenario was. Hank had never shown her that he was an angry person in any way. He gave off that vibe, but she had never seen him use a cruel tone or action with anyone. "Are you okay? You sure you aren't upset?" "Of course I'm upset. I really thought you and I could have had a nice future together, but if your heart is telling you something different, then I have to respect that. I'm man enough to admit defeat." "Wow, I thank you so much for being so understanding. You are an amazing guy, Hank, and I know the right woman for you will be just around the corner any day now." Hank smiled weakly. Allison might have been overdoing it a little with the pep talk. She even thought it sounded a bit lame. Allison did not want to leave yet. She wanted to talk to Hank a bit longer. Even though they weren't going to be romantically involved anymore, she could not stand the idea of him not being her friend. They had grown so close recently. "Of course we will always be close friends," Hank replied when she told him how she felt about their relationship. "I'm so glad to hear that." Allison felt the tears welling up again. "Am I going to have to follow you around with a tissue?" Hank joked. "Hey, I can't help it. It has been a roller coaster the past few weeks." "I know it has, and you have handled it beautifully. Thanks. So, what happens now for you? Allison asked. What do you mean? Well, do you have someone else who needs to be spied over and protected? Allison asked coyly. Hank smiled. No. For me, it is just back to the grind, which means mostly sitting behind a desk and trudging through paperwork. That sounds like so much fun, Allison responded. It's not at all, Hank joked. They continued to converse and enjoy a few more cups of coffee together. The conversation between them had always flowed fairly easily. Hank had such an enormous sense of humor that he tried to hide away, but she had been able to get beneath the surface of it and see the real him. When she left the coffee shop, she drove to Carlson's. He was making dinner, and she found that by the time she got there she was starving. She had made sure only to have coffee and a small piece of pie at the coffee shop, and she had actually been too nervous to eat lunch before that. So by the time she got to Carlson's, she was ravenous. Carlson fixed the most romantic dinner for her. He had roasted chicken with scalloped potatoes and pasta salad. Then he had bought an authentic Dutch apple pie for dessert. Allison knew that she would probably gain weight just by smelling the food, but she decided that she just didn't care, and dove right into it. So, how did he take it? Carlson asked. She was wondering if he would even bring it up, or if he cared. He actually took it really well, Allison said. That doesn't surprise me. Why? Well, he is the type of dude that you just can't get a read on. He hides from his feelings, so even if he was upset, he would never show it to you. I think you are right to a certain extent, Allison replied. I think I'm right to a full extent, Carlson joked. Allison just had to shake her head. The guy was a cut-up. She felt incredibly lucky. The next day, Carlson surprised her by telling her that they were going to the Bahamas for a week. She had been woken up in bed by him. He had just come from the shower, and after drying off, he slid in between the covers with her. He was
censored
and still glistening a little bit. Even though she was barely awake, she found herself getting a bit turned on. She was also
censored
after spending half the night making love. He had worn her out several times, and now her body
censored
from lack of rest, but she was still getting turned on all the same. As he slid into the bed, his erect penis rested against her leg, only inches from her sweet spot. Hey honey, Carlson said. He
censored
her sweetly twice. She loved his morning.
Censored.
Hey sexy. What's going on? It's time to get up. No, I don't think it is. Neither of us have anything to do today, Allison said. She closed her eyes, hoping to fall asleep again soon. She was getting horny, but she was too tired to really want to do anything about it. Actually, we have a plane to catch, Carlson said. Allison's eyes flew open. What? Yeah. We are going to the Bahamas. Our flight leaves in 3 hours. So you should get dressed and packed for a week in the Bahamas. Allison could not believe what she was hearing. She continued to stare at Carlson like he was kidding, waiting for him to drop the act, but he had already hopped out of bed and gotten dressed. Then he grabbed his luggage and began to pack. You are kidding me, right? Allison asked. Carlson looked at her and said, Nope. Allison screamed in delight as she hopped out of bed and wrapped her arms around him. She
censored
him hard and deep, and she was beginning to wish they'd had time for a quickie. She grabbed her stuff and began to pack quickly. The Bahamas. She had always wanted to go to some place like that. She had spent 8 months traveling through Europe, so she was not a novice traveler, but she had never been anywhere as exotic as the Bahamas. It was on the list of places that she decided that she had to visit before she died, and she was going to have that opportunity now. An hour later, their bags were packed, and they were on the way to the airport. Allison could not contain her excitement. She was probably rambling like some little girl about anything and everything, but Carlson just sat back and smiled. Allison had been dreaming of a day when she would fly off into the sunset with her Prince Charming, and they would be flying to some exotic destination, and now it was really happening. She had no idea how she had become this lucky. A short while later they were in the plane, and they were ready for takeoff. Allison's favorite part of flying had always been the takeoff. It was so fun to feel the power of the plane's engine roar to life as it sped down the ramp as fast as possible, until it suddenly hit the wind and began to rise up in the air. The climb up was so much fun that she wished that was the whole flight. The flight time in between was usually pretty boring, she had always thought, but then again she had only flown twice really. The estimated arrival time would take them about 5 hours in the air to get to the Bahamas. She wanted to spend that time sleeping, but she didn't. She was far too excited about everything. She was excited about the trip to the Bahamas, and about all of the future trips she envisioned them taking. She was also excited about starting her life with Carlson. He had not made any hints of marriage so far, but she had her suspicions. The trip to the Bahamas out of the blue like that seemed to suggest more to her than Carlson just being a bit impulsive, which he was. But she couldn't help feeling like there was something else that was going to happen on this trip, but she didn't want to ask or push it in any way. She wanted to just take things as they happened. "So, are you excited?" Carlson asked. Allison laughed. "Are you kidding? This is the best idea ever. How did you come up with it all of a sudden?" "Oh, it's something I've been planning for a while. It is to solidify our relationship and to signal a new chapter in our lives." "I agree that it is perfect." Carlson
censored
her on the mouth and then on the forehead. She grinned goofily. Getting
censored
on the forehead always had that effect on her. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and before she knew it, she was starting to drift off to sleep. Carlson obviously didn't mind it though. When she woke up, the plane had landed. They quickly got off the plane, grabbed their luggage, and took a cab to a resort where Carlson had reserved a room. The place was huge. It was fantastic. Allison was in heaven. As soon as she entered the hotel room, she found herself running from room to room checking the place out. It was 2 stories, and each room was about 5 times bigger than her dorm room. The living room was huge with large sectional couches and a 60-inch television on the wall. Upstairs there was a humongous master bedroom with a sauna and a jacuzzi. She was looking forward to trying that out with Carlson soon. After she finished the tour, she wrapped her arms around Carlson's neck and pulled him close. "So, what do you think?" Carlson asked. "It's perfect. I can't believe we get to stay here." "How much did this cost you?" Allison asked. Then she stopped herself. "I'm sorry, it's none of my business and not important." "It's fine, honey. I have actually been saving up for this for a while. Ever since I first decided to tell you how I felt about you." Allison was at a loss for words. She leaned in and
censored
Carlson sweetly on the lips. "I love you," she said. Then she buried her face in his broad, warm
censored.
"Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my author friend's book Rough Start. A big favor to ask. I would really love it if you could take a few seconds to leave me a review. Thank you so much in advance." About the author. Selena Coffey is a romance writer who lives happily in London with her husband and son. She is a hopeless romantic who grew up always believing in love, and she is not ashamed to admit this. It is this belief that makes her so passionate about writing crazy love stories. A stereotypical girly girl, she loves shopping. So whenever she gets a chance and the spare cash, you will probably find her browsing online for the next pair of shoes to add to her collection. You can find her online at www.selenacoffey.com. Contact her at hello@selenacoffey.com. Closing credits. This has been Double Protection. Written by Selena Coffey. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited.